Om Jaya Tvam Devi Chamunde Jaya Bhuta Paharini Jaya Sarva Gate Devi Kālī Namostute Om Jayanti Mangala Kālī Bhadra Kālī Kapalini Durgā Shiva Kshama Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Namo Devī Māhātmya Shivāya Satatam Namaha Namo Pakritye Bhadraye Niyata Pranata Smatam Jaya Tvam Devi Chamunde, salutations to you, you who are the fierce goddess Chamunda. Jaya Tvam Devi Chamunde, Jaya Bhuta Paharini, you who are the dispeller of all ghosts and demons. Jaya Bhuta Paharini, Jaya Sarvagate Devi, salutations to the goddess who is the refuge of all beings. Jaya Sarvagate Devi, Kālī Namostute, salutations to you who art the dark night. Kālī, Jayanti Mangala Kālī, victory to that auspiciousness who is Kālī. Bhadra Kālī Namostute, victory to her and salutations to her who is victory and auspiciousness embodied, who is ever auspicious. Jayanti Mangala Kālī Bhadra Kālī Kapalini, who is the wielder of the skull bowl, Kapalini, the one who carries around the Kapala. Kapalini, Jayatvam Devi Jayanti Mangala Kālī Bhadra Kālī Kapalini, salutations to Durgā, salutations to Shiva, who is inseparable from Durga, the ever-forbearing, ever-forgiving ground in which all things rest. Durgā Shiva Kshama Dhatri, salutations to that goddess who is embodied in all mantras, as all mantras. Swaha Swadha Namostute. Om. Namo Devī Māhātmya, salutations to the goddess, the great goddess. Namo Devī Māhātmya. Shivāya Satatam Namaha, salutations to her who is Sada, who is Satatam, who is always Shiva, who is always auspicious. Shivāya Satatam Namaha. Namo Prakritye Bhadraye, salutations to the creatrix, to nature, invisible and visible. Namo Prakritye Bhadraye, the auspicious one. Again and again, eternally I salute you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. So happy Navaratri. I want to introduce you to perhaps the most powerful text we will ever come across. I'm going to just argue it outright that this is perhaps the most powerful text that we will ever come across in our journey as Śākta. So all of you who are on the Śākta path, that is those of you who are worshipping the Divine Mother in all shapes and forms, it's very important that you be acquainted with this text. And naturally, Navaratri, the 9 nights of the goddess, 10 if you include Mahalaya, and for worshippers of the goddess, every night is Navaratri night. But for Navaratri, for the period known as the goddess festival, Durgā festival, this is the central text. And for generations, for centuries, maybe even for millennia, since time immemorial, this text has been used as a centerpiece for the festival, for the rituals, for the spiritual practices, for the popular mythologies and imagery and iconography. But it's as current today, if not more so, than at any other time. It's one of those texts that is both ancient and incredibly, powerfully relevant, in the sense that right now, at this very moment, millions, maybe a billion at least, I don't know, I'm just gonna guess those numbers, but a lot of people, insert Indian hyperbole here, a lot of people right now at this very moment are probably chanting it, and will be chanting it with fervor and with gusto over the course of the next 9 nights, and for good reason too, because it is an unbelievably powerful text. It's like the if you know kind of thing. It's like we hear about the Chandi, where many of us, I think, kind of familiar with the iconography and the mythology of the Chandi. It's unlikely that you wouldn't have encountered the Chandi. Actually, Dharmakaya Devi sent me a picture of something that her partner had acquired for their house, and make no mistake, it was none other than Mahishasura Mardini in a Bengali folk style, the goddess Durga slaying the buffalo demon, and she always felt the power of that artwork. And it's like one of those things where you might just inadvertently see this image of the goddess slaying the buffalo demon. It's in fact an incredibly old image, because it appears in the cuneiform tablets of the pre-Vedic civilization, which scholars sometimes called the Indus-Saraswati Valley civilization or the Mohenjo-Daro Harappan civilization. It's Viranatha's phone background. Oh, gee, can you put the link to your website in the chat? Also, Asha, I'm so sorry. Can you do that also? I don't mean to displace you, but do you mind putting Asha's document and Viranatha's website? I'll come to that in just a few moments. We're going to talk about resources for Navaratri, but mainly I want to put this text before you and say a few things about it. It's popularly referred to as the Chandi. Now, Chandi is one of the names of the goddess, but the name literally means the fierce one. So I think that's quite important, that the goddess in question here is Kālī, is none other than Kālī Kala Sankarshini. Now, we call her Kālī for a variety of reasons. That's the name of choice that we tend to use in our community for the goddess, Kālī. And you can even see in the opening verses of the Chandi, in the Argala Stotram, in one of the preliminary hymns of the text, Jayatvam Devī Chamunde, she is called Chamunda, the slayers of the demon Chanda and Munda. But also there's an emphasis on the word Munda, which means heads. So Chamunda, the one with the heads, or the slayer of the demons who are known as Chanda and Munda. So Chamunda. Another name for her is Chandi, Chandika, but of course Kālī. So Jayatvam Devi Chamunde, Jaya Bhuta Paharini, Jaya Sarvagate Devi, Kālaratri Namostute. So therein comes the idea of darkness, of night, of Kala, of time. And Kala can mean black, but it can also mean time. So she is the great night of time. Mahakali, Mahakala, the idea of Bhairava, that fierce form of the goddess who devours everything, who withdraws everything back into herself, and who also vomits everything back out again and again and again. The source from which everything emerges, and importantly, the source into which everything dissolves. That's implied by Kālaratri Namostute. So in the first verse of the auxiliary, or rather preliminary hymn called the Argala Stotram, immediately you encounter the goddess in this fierce, uncompromising form. Chamunda, the slayer of demons, who is bedecked in heads, the terrifying one, Chamunda, who is the destroyer of ghosts, but also who is the refuge to all beings. She is Bhuta Paharini, but she's also Sarvagate. She is the bosom upon which we all rest. So there's this idea of motherly tenderness and a fierce warrior savagery, both commingling in this idea of Chamunda, who is described as the great night of time, or the black night, the dark night, not to be confused with Batman or anything, but somewhat along similar lines, I guess. She is the hero that Gotham deserves, but that nobody wanted. She's frightening, and when we think about her, we're terrified. We should be terrified, but in that terror we find rest and refuge. What a delightful paradox in that first verse. Jayatvam Devi Chamunde, Jaya Bhuta Paharini, Jaya Sarvagate Devi, Kālaratri Namoste. Now the next verse is sometimes the first verse. Like, these two get mixed up sometimes in different editions of the Argala Stotram. Sometimes it opens with Jayanti Mangala Kālī, other times it opens with Jayatvam Devi Chamunde. In our version it opens with Jayatvam Devi Chamunde, so that's the one I'm going with. But you might have seen it as Jayanti Mangala Kālī. That's the first mantra. And that's wonderful, because if that's the first mantra, then immediately Kālī is mentioned within the first three words of the Chandi. So, Jayatvam Devi Chamunde, now we know her name is Chamunda, the fierce one with the skulls, who is the slayer of Chanda and Munda, Jayatvam Devi. Salutations to you, goddess. And notice just the devotional sentiment immediately present in those first three words. Jayatvam Devi, salutations to you, O goddess. So the Chandi is not this text describing the goddess in a kind of third person kind of way. It is a direct address to the goddess, and arguably from the goddess within the goddess. We'll get into some more nuanced Śākta theology in just a few moments. But basically you can see there's a devotional sentiment from the very outset. Jayatvam Devi, Chamunde, Jaya Bhuta Paharini, Jaya Sarvagate Devi, Kālaratri Namoste. Now you should recall now the image of Kālī, or Dakshina Kālī, where her two left arms are ferocious and terrifying. A sword aimed for your neck, a severed head, just so there's no illusion as to what's going to happen to you. But then the other two hands, the right hands, lotus-like right hands, as we call them. Abhayam Varadam Jaiva, Dakshinodvada Panikam. In her lotus-like right hands, Abhaya and Vara, she offers the gesture of fearlessness, and she also gives boons. Which is so much what life is like. Like, terrible things are happening to us, but somehow deep within the suffering, there's this hand that says, rest assured, all of this is for your highest good. I am purifying you. I'm taking you to your next highest expression, ultimately bringing you home back to me. You might not like it, but these are growing pains, and rest assured, I got you. You're safe. This is Abhaya Mudra. And also, what do you want? Because in the midst of all this terror that you're currently experiencing, don't forget, you can also have whatever you want. So she extends a hand, willing to give you any and all boons. So Abhaya, Vara, these are the two mudras that depict her right-hand side. And then, of course, her Khadga, her sword, and her Narashira, not a demon's head, mind you, a human's head. These are her terrific side. So you could say, in one image, the paradox of terror and beauty, or rather, danger and safety. In one image, these two are reconciled. Exactly what happens in the mantric form. So the point I'm trying to make now is that when you think of the goddess in any one of her shapes, those mantric forms, meaning the pure sonic vibratory essence of all of those images in the mind, they are present in the Chandi. So Jayatvam Devi Chamunde, Jaya Bhuta Paharini, Jaya Sarvagate Devi, Kālāratri Namostate. We know that Chamunda or Kālāratri, two names for the goddess, same goddess though, we know that she is the reconciliation of all paradox, of all terror and all safety. So verily then, in the next verse, or sometimes according to some editions, the first verse, her name is Kālī. Jayatvam Devi Chamunde, later Jayanti Mangala Kālī. But lest we feel frightened, Bhadrakali Namostate. I salute that auspicious Kālī, Bhadrakali Namostate. In many South Indian temples, and my Akka Ranmali is here, Jaima, Jaima, Jaima. In many South Indian temples, you'll see that Kālī is sometimes called Bhadrakali. Bhadrakali. That's one of the more popular names by which she is known in the south. Amman in our community, but we sometimes call her Bhadrakali. So Jayanti Mangala Kālī. She is Jayanti. Again, that name can be explored a lot. There's so much to that name, Jayanti. There's a series of goddesses like Aparajita, Jayanti, etc. We don't need to get into Jaya, Vijaya, Jayanti, Aparajita. We don't need to get into those sets of four, like Raudri, etc. There's so much to explore in just that word Jayanti. And even in the word Mangala, it's interesting. The Krama lineage to which we belong, arguably the Kaula Marga, it traces its roots back to a yogini, a woman in the cremation ground somewhere in what is now northwestern India, maybe even modern day Pakistan. There's like a place called the Swat Valley, Odiana, and there was a moment when one of our grandmasters of the lineage, Shivananda or Gyanetranatha as he was known, met a yogini. And many people say that this is a mythological, a legendary figure, not mythological in the sense that it's untrue, but legendary in the sense that it's non-corporeal, non-human, non-historical. Like this is the goddess Kālī who appears to Gyanetranatha and directly reveals to him the Kālikula or the Krama, the system of worship known as Kālī in esoteric Shaivism. But it could have very well just been a woman. And by just a woman, we know her to be the goddess herself. And so that's why I think the Krama and the Kaula has featured many female gurus. Even Sri Ramakrishna, it's appropriate that he learned Kaula Marga from a Bhairavi. For the female-bodied women are practitioners, especially teachers, are highly privileged in this tradition as being particularly close to the yoginis and dakinis who are central to the Kapalika and Kaula traditions. Okay, so having said that, Mangala is the name of that woman, or that euhemerized woman, or that goddess who appeared to Gyanetranatha and initiated him into the Kaula Marga. And if it wasn't for that Machanda, that Kagendra, if it wasn't for that Gyanetranatha, we would not all be here talking about Kālī. So I think that's, for us, a powerful association. Jayanti, Mangala, Kālī, Bhadra Kālī, Kapalini. Now, I don't think there could be a clearer reference to the Kapalika traditions of early Shaivism. I'm talking about the ascetic Shaivas of the cremation ground, the Atimargins, the Mahavratins, the Kalamukas, what maybe then becomes the Yogini Kula. Because so much of the Chandi is about the yoginis, especially in the third story, the Uttama Charita. There we meet the yoginis, the Saptamatrikas, fierce cremation ground spirits. Exactly, Kuleshwari. And those Saptamatrikas are emanations of the goddess. And unsurprisingly, the Kapalikas were perhaps the first people in history to encounter those energies in the cremation ground and through them learn their ways of worship. So Kapala means skull bowl, right? It means the skull that the Kapalika carries. So Kapalini, she's described as the Kapalini. And we know from the depictions that we get in our texts that the Kapalikas are night wanderers. They're ascetics who roam the cremation ground at night, drinking freely from their skull bowl, intoxicated beyond all notions of purity and impurity, covered in ash with matted locks. They are Shiva's representatives on earth. Despised by society, misunderstood, but ecstatic, mad by the standards of an insane society, absolutely sane by the standards of a mystic. They roam the nighttime, alternating periods of night wandering, as one scholar said, with this is Lorenzen. Lorenzen said they alternate. He translated it very beautifully. He said they're alternating their periods of night wandering with ritual worship, with consorts, and with transgressive substances, in the hopes that they will be possessed by these yoginis and thereby attain vidyā, knowledge, but also siddhi. A lot of these ascetics were power seeking. They were interested in empowerment. And so much of the application of the Chandi is in that context, is in casting curses, in breaking curses, in protecting yourself from curses, in getting money, in killing your enemies. Like, so much of the Chandi is in that Tāntrik world, that Tāntrik world of hexes and hex and sex, I guess you could say. That stuff that no one likes to talk about. That is the Shaiva tradition and the Shaiva heritage before all the puritanical, propaganda pushed us underground. But this Kapalika tradition is very important because it's indicated by the word Kapalini, she who carries around a skull. But because, I'm a hex girl and I'm gonna put a spell on you. Remember the Scooby-Doo movie? It's my Halloween costume many, many, many years ago. I was in a band with two other people, bass player and drummer, and I forced them all to put on vampire dresses so we could be the Hex Girls. Yeah, I know. I'm glad you weren't at that show then, because you wouldn't have been able to control yourself. We were all the Hex Girls. That's actually how I met Vijaya. She opened, like, when I opened the door to say hello to my future wife, like, I was in a dress, like, dressed as the Hex Girls. Thank God. Otherwise, I don't know how she would have fallen for me. She's too gay to fall for me, like, regularly anyway. Okay. Anyway, so the Kapalini tradition is very important. Kapala means the skull bowl that the Kapalika would carry with him in the cremation ground as he performed rituals, and often those rituals are done in the Kapala. Now, that's an important point, that within the Kapala itself was the sacred vessel for almost any and all ritual activity. Abhinavagupta reinterprets this in a really beautiful way. He says the Kaula, the practitioner of the Kaula Marga, wanders the world, because the world is now the cremation ground, drinking out of the skull, which are the objects of knowledge, the wine which is the essence of the universe. So basically, he's saying in any one cognition, like the arising of the experience blueness or pleasure, when you see the color blue, you're having an experience of experiencing. If you can move your attention away from the color blue to the context in which that color is arising, that is to say, if you can move from the object of knowledge, the cognition, the experience itself, to the experiencer, to the ground of knowledge itself, what Sri Krishna calls the field, the kshetra. If you can repose, vishranti is the word in Sanskrit, if you can repose in your own interiority, in your own field of awareness, which can become available to you with any experience, like the taste of lemon or the experience of the color blue. If you can have that experience, then you have entered into the essence of the universe, which is nothing but consciousness, and it is replete with bliss and blessedness. So to taste the joy which is always arising in consciousness is the goal of the Gaula Marga, to repose in your own interiority. So that's the wine, the Sara. The wine is the essence of the universe, and the Kapala, the skull bowl, is literally any limiting object in which the entire oceanic experience can be felt. How beautiful to think of, like, the literal application of the skull filled with liquor and the metaphorical or philosophical or symbolic application of the skull, which is any object of cognition, filled with the liquor of your own non-dual consciousness, which is everywhere, always available, in all things, as all things. So by thinking of Kali as Kapalini, something very important has happened. We have linked her in the Chandi with the early cremation ground traditions of Atimargism or Kalamukha Margism or something. Like, there's many words for it, but we can call it the Kapalika or Yogini Kula. In fact, the word Kula, Kaula, which is maybe arguably the adjectival form of the word Kula, it comes from arguably the sets of yoginis that we are introduced to in the Chandi. So the 64 yoginis, who are all ruled over by 8 or 7 principal yoginis, they're all to be encountered in the Chandi. 7 of them, Sapta Matrikas, which is a very important topic that we'll cover later this week. Okay, so we have this idea, Jayanti Mangala Kali, Bhadra Kali, Kapalini. Durga, now comes her name by which she is known popularly all over. Durga. Durga means fortress or difficulty. So there's something beautiful about the name itself. It implies the same thing that Chandi or Chamunda or Kālī or Kali Kala Sankarshini implies. That this is going to be fierce, that she is a fierce and difficult energy, actually. But in that ferocity, in that difficulty, is our refuge, is our safety. What a beautiful idea that she is safe, but also for the mind, terrifying. Yes, she's aparajita, as Viranatha is saying. Aparajita means unconquerable, which is one of the names of the hymns that we encounter in the Chandi. So she is Durga, she is the fortress in which we can take refuge, but she is also like an unassailable fortress. Now, make no mistake. Let me at least say this. You are about to participate in a warrior's tradition. The worship, Ranmalima will know about this, but the worship of Muruga, Skanda, that's my akka, so we share a lot of similar Ceylonese background. So this is something, unfortunately, that gets erased a lot in the context of kind of like, colonial representations of Hinduism. But don't forget that like Brahmanas are not the only representatives of Hinduism. They're an important part, an important representative, and totally valid. But so too are our Kshatriya traditions. And I grew up in a Kshatriya family for whom the worship of the goddess Durga took on a Kshatriya form. And so we Pillays are distinctly aware of the warrior heritage which we inherit when we come to the text, like the Chandi. So a lot of this culture can be traced back to like, warriors who would bless their weapons, who would offer their weapons to the goddess Durga for protection in war. And you have to remember that meat eating and wine drinking, beyond just the value in the Vamachara, like for the sake of transgressing and going beyond like caste-bound societal constructs, which is it's in of itself a very valuable practice for the one for whom it's going to be who is ready for it, but it's also something to be noted that these cultures just drank liquor as part of their practice. Like before going to battle, it was essential that these people be drunk. And not only that, it is essential that they eat meat because often that meat eating was part of their building of strength, etc. So this meat eating, wine drinking, which sometimes gets associated to the worship of the goddess Durga, it might have something to do with the Kshatriya cultures in which these traditions developed a long time ago. Also, it's coded with the kind of Vama Marga, Tāntrik kind of purity, transgressive kind of stuff. But we have to remember this is a warrior text. So Durga is naturally depicted as a warrior goddess, constantly at war and constantly intoxicated. So intoxication becomes an important part of this. So one of the tensions in India is, of course, like everywhere in the world, about food, about dietary requirement. It's one of the things that split Christianity, actually, because the Jewish faction of Christianity were not comfortable with dining with Gentiles, because Paul was bringing all these Gentiles into the fold, but they had different dietary requirements. And that was actually a tension in early Christianity. Even during the Roman period, a lot of the Christians, as scholars are noting, were not able to actually eat the food that they were buying in Roman marketplaces because so much of that food had been sacrificed to the emperor and to the Roman gods. And so they didn't want to partake of that prasad, they didn't want to eat the food that was offered in pagan rituals. So many of them actually opted to being vegetarians. Very, very interesting idea. But food is a big deal, obviously. Sri Shankara defines food as anything that you ingest with your senses and with your mind. But for someone like Sri Ramanuja and many other masters in our tradition, they meant literal food. They were talking about the gut brain and the effect that food has on the psyche. Food and spirituality, of course, are deeply intertwined. And a change in diet will be a change in mind, etc., etc. And we all need different things to be nourished and to be strong. So having said all of that, one of the things in India is, of course, on food is like vegetarianism, etc. So people often say, see, you people, you're all vegetarian, but the very gods you worshipped Durga with wine and meat. And of course, Swami Vivekananda once made that statement about Vaishnavas and gone to trouble for it. But why was Rama worshipping Durga with wine and meat? Why was Krishna worshipping Durga with wine and meat? Because they are Kshatriyas. Hooray! That's what Kshatriyas eat, and that's what Kshatriyas drink, especially on the eve of battle. And this Durga, who we're talking about, is a Kshatriya deity. I'm not going to say she is just a Kshatriya. She, of course, belongs to a much wider tradition. But I think, shouldn't erase the roots of much of the Chandi, which comes from a warrior ethos. Now, when we bring it into the spiritual domain, we're working with something really, really special. That rajasic force, that pure vitality and vigor and intoxicated fervor with which we do battle on the battlefield, with that same vigor we do spiritual battle against the quote-unquote foes of the psyche. So when we say, Mother Durga, Durga, destroy my enemies, Sarva Shatru Vinashaya, we could mean it literally. Indeed, that's how many of us meant it in our ancestry. But of course, in this context, we mean it spiritually. We're saying, and by the way, the only enemies that exist are there in our own heads, in our own psyche. And once those are vanquished, we see that the world is free. What to say of enemies? It's free of all duality. We see nothing but the goddess everywhere. Once these inner obstacles are vanquished. But one needs great vigor. So Sri Ramakrishna was always fond of this metaphor of like bulls. He would say some bulls are really frisky. If you so much as touch its tail, it'll go, like it's frisky. It's a frisky bull. And he said good spiritual aspirants are like that. They're full of fire and fight. And that's why he loved Vivekananda. Because Vivekananda was like so rambunctious and so aggressive. People hated him. You have to understand that like many people didn't like Narendranath because he was such a precocious and boisterous and arrogant youth. He would debate anybody for any reason. He was very argumentative, and people had a big problem with him, and they would complain to Sri Ramakrishna about Swami Vivekananda, and he would merely, Sri Ramakrishna would merely brush it off because he was so fond of Swami Vivekananda's fight, of his sattvic rajas kind of energy, pure virility and power. Virya, he's a true vira, you could say. A vira, a hero, is one who is endowed with virya, with energy, with potency. And this kind of sadhana is for viras and viras. Okay, having said that, Sri Ramakrishna would say, and some bowls, they barely make any sound when you touch them. He says they are like soft, mushy rice. What can such people achieve? He would sometimes compare these two things. So there should be energy, there should be power, there should be virya in spiritual life. And it's through thinking of Divine Mother Kali, Divine Mother Durga, through practicing the Chandi, it's through things like this that we gain virya. By the way, my lamp is burning out, so let me just quickly show you this lamp. All the oil just ran out. Okay, yeah, never mind. It's okay. It's burnt out. It's okay. I, I had a nice lamp going. I have more. Don't worry. Don't worry. The Chandi should never be chanted without lamps going, and I'll make a point about that in just a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to show you this nice standing lamp. Never mind. That's actually the Grammy music. That's Ma. Like, come on with it. We got to talk about the sadhana now. Quit riffing on the first two verses of the Chandi. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. The Chandi is a war text. It's set on a battlefield like the Bhagavad Gita. But unlike the Bhagavad Gita, much of it happens during the battle, not before the battle. And of course, there's a sequel, to the Bhagavad Gita called the Shanti Gita. And that's like kind of after the battle, during another moment of respite, right after Sri Arjuna has lost his son, Abhimanyu. But so much of the dialogue that Sri Krishna has with Sri Arjuna is on the eve of war or during a break from war. But so much of the Chandi occurs in the context of battle. Not always. In the first hymn, it's happening before the battle. And of course, all the hymns come at the end of a battle. But so much of the narrative itself, which is a story within a story, arguably within a story, a lot of that narrative is kind of violent and martial. And the mantras themselves carry the sound of war drums and intoxicating bloodlust. And so that therefore the text is super secret because of how powerful it is and how intoxicating it is. And also because it can be applied for many nefarious things, given the power of the mantra. So I'm going to go back now to that claim that I made in the beginning of all of this. As Śāktas, as practitioners of this tradition, there is perhaps no text quite as ancient, quite as relevant, and perhaps quite as powerful. Just speaking on the level of mantra and precedent, speaking on the level of pure precedent, there is perhaps no text quite so important as this Devī Māhātmya, also known as the Chandi. So coming back to that point now, she is called Chandi, Chamunda. And these are all names that Abhinavagupta uses actually for the goddess. Like in chapter 4 of Tantra Sara, he lists a whole bunch of names for Kali. Kali is one of them, but the other names are like Chandi, Chamunda, Chandika, and of course in chapter 29 of the Vijnana Bhairava, which is drawn from texts like the Veeravali and the Yoga Sanchara, very left-leaning texts, there he gives us a mantra. One of the Kali mantras, a 17-syllable mantra. And there, the name of Kali is Maha Chanda Yogeshwari. So the supremely fierce ruler of yoginis, or the ruler of yoga. Yogeshwari can mean the ruler of yoga, but notice Maha Chanda. So Chandi, Chandika, Chanda, Chamunda. These are all names for the goddess, which we typically call Durgā, or which we sometimes refer to as Kālī. So you should just know that in the Jayadrata Yamala Tantra, which we have as the Tantra Raja Bhattarika, she is called Kālī Kala Sankarshini. Yeah, that's her name, Kali Kala Sankarshini. In fact, one of her older names is Krisha, not Krishna, but similar. Krisha means the slim, emaciated one. And when you meet Chamunda later, she's one of the Saptamatrikas. When you meet her, you'll see that she's described in ghastly terms: pendulous, sagging breast, emaciated, terrifying, fangs, and insatiably hungry. That's one thing you'll notice about Chamunda. She just can't get enough. She's devouring, devouring, devouring. She's like this gaping maw into which everything is ultimately consumed. Many who will encounter her, if you're so lucky as to have a darshan of her, I think many will have a heart attack and die on the spot. There's only one kind of person, I think, who will withstand the force of that energy, and that's a Veera, one who has developed real fearlessness, real courage. And if you're squeamish about things like purity or impurity, if you're squeamish about things like food and other people, don't even think about it. She'll frighten you to death. One must be fearless, absolutely fearless. To look at life, even, to look at life, actually look at life, to see all the horror in the world and come to terms with it, to involve yourself in it, to take up, arguably, to enter the battlefield. Like one has to be fearless. But it takes even more courage to enter the battlefield of the mind, because the real enemies are only there. There are no enemies beyond the mind. And because they are there in the mind, they appear in the world. So it's relatively easier, actually, to fight out here. Not to say that's not valuable. One can do that, certainly, if that's your calling. Um, there's a time and place for that, no doubt. But the real battle, not to say a different battle, the battle that we're going to engage in, a prior battle, we could say, is the battle that we fight within. And that's the only one we arguably need to win. If we win that battle, everything here becomes easy. And like the goddess, we vanquish our enemies while drunk and happy. She doesn't, it's not like not even a hair on her head is disturbed, as it were, as she goes to war. She's like, so she has nothing to gain, nothing to lose, and she vanquishes enemies with delight. It's fun for her. The battlefield is fun for her. Like that, we will win all our wars out here if we can but win the one in here, but it's scary. The battle within is terrifying. And the one goddess who can help us vanquish our foes, she's terrifying. That's over here, by the way. So she's terrifying, and to come face to face with her is terrifying, just as it is terrifying to come face to face with our inner demons. And so this is a journey into fear, and ultimately one vanquishes all fear as a result of this sadhana. So this sadhana gives virya, vigor or power or potency. It gives abhaya, meaning fearlessness. It gives so much. It gives everything. And so what a powerful text, the Devī Māhātmya, the Chandi. So we call it the Chandi. Sometimes it's called the Saptashati because there are 700 verses in it. Saptashati or Chandi or Devī Māhātmya. And there is, of course, the text itself, which is split over the course of 13 chapters. There are 700 verses. And that's significant too. There are Saptamatrikas, 7 mothers, 700 verses, the 12 Kālīs, the 13th Kālī being the transcendent one in which the 12 are reconciled. There's lots of ways to understand 3 stories. They're called charitas. There's the Pratama, the first story, the Madhya, the middle story, and the Uttama, the final story, which is the culminating story. So there are 3 episodes or 3 acts. You could divide these into the 3 gunas of the Sankhyan system, starting with Tamoguna, then going into Rajoguna, and then finally going into Sattva Guna. So there are demons in all 3 realms. There are tamasic demons like Madhu and Kaitaba, who are the main antagonist of the first episode or the first act. There are rajasic demons like Mahisha. Mahishasura is a buffalo demon representing the ego in its rajasic shape-shifting aspect. And of course, very powerful demons, sattvic demons. And we're talking about them maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. The demons of spiritual pride, of refinement. You know what the greatest thing you can do as a Shaiva? I'm just going to come out and say it. Deicide. Do you know? Because Shiva becomes Bhairava upon beheading Brahma. That's the act that turns him into a Kapalika, turns him into Bhairava. Until you kill God, don't talk to me. I'm not interested. You won't be good at this sadhana. Until you're ready to grab your God by the hair and drag them to the altar of your sacrifice and behead them, we have no work to do together. And I mean your God. Tell me who you worship, and I'll tell you who to kill. That's how you become a Shaiva. And you can see that kind of sentiment is captured by the if you meet Buddha on the road, kill him kind of idea. That's the same idea. I mean, what's an idea? Like if you meet Buddha on the road, kill him. Nietzsche is like God is dead. I'm like, yes, because mother killed him. So like whoever God is, whoever your idea of God is but a vikalpa, but a thought construct. It's a projection onto reality of the mind. Usually it's a very skewed projection. Look how much blood is spilt in the name of God. That is no God. Look how much judgment is cast in the name of purity. How impure. The only impurity in this world is thinking that there's anything in this world that is impure. And notice how much fear it causes. You're afraid of a little garlic, you're afraid of a little, person over here, a person over there, a little shadow in the corner spooks you out. You live in a world of conspiracy theories and aliens and all sorts of things that are all meaning you harm. I'm not saying those things aren't there. I'm just saying, why should I be afraid of them? And you can only really fear them if there's some idea of God, some person in the sky. So Swami Vivekananda, way before Nietzsche, was bold enough to say, he didn't say God is dead. He said Vedanta dethroned God. You know, Vedanta kills God. He means Vedanta in like a very broad kind of Tantric way, I would argue. But we killed God. And that's what Shiva did. Brahma is God. Brahma is the creator of the universe. Lord Shiva's act, which turns him into Bhairava, which turns him into a Kapalika, is beheading Brahma. But you know who else Brahma is? He's not just a god, he's also a Brahmana, meaning he's the ultimate symbol of institutions, of orthodoxy, of purity, which all have their place, mind you. Like I was arguing 2 lectures ago, these are all very supportive, very helpful structures for most of our spiritual life. But there comes a time when the old man must go. And so when Shiva decapitates Brahma, then only he becomes Bhairava, Kapalika. So deicide and Brahma Hatya, I guess you could say Brahmanacide, these are the highest virtues in Shaivism. Isn't that crazy? What an inversion. And so anyway, having said that, why are we saying, what? Where was I going with this? Chandi, Chandika, Chamunda, Kali, Kali Kala Sankarshini, Chamunda, she's insatiable, she's always hungry. Oh, fear, fear. It's terrifying. Yes. So that bhava of being willing to kill the Buddha that you meet on the road, being willing to give up all your concepts, which keep us safe. They're a prison, but we take so much safety in our prisons. So the willingness to step out of the comfort and safety of our thought constructs, that's what it means to meet Kali or Chandika or Chamunda, who is the pure void. Just to experience the full energies of embodiment without fear. Because so much of our experience in life is repression. We don't want to feel the things that having a body enables us to feel. And the Chandi is here to help unleash that. It unleashes the energies of embodiment, which sometimes the mind labels incorrectly, I would say, as anger or as lust or as greed or as pride or whatever you want to call them. They're just pure psychic energy. And the Chandi will increase that within you. So if you find that you're lethargic or you're like a tired type or like kind of tamasic, one can get so much virility and power, vidyā, from chanting the Chandi, from doing the sadhana that we're going to sketch out in just a few moments. So yeah, I was talking about sattvic demons. So once you destroy the demons of tamaguna, which you can do through rajas, eventually you overcome rajas through sattva, but then you have to overcome sattva also, which is arguably the hardest battle because so much of sattva is so good. It's so helpful in spiritual life. But again, like we said a week ago or a week before that, ultimately, according to Sri Ramakrishna's metaphor, it's still a robber. You still have to go beyond sattva. And so mother still has to vanquish those sattvic demons, Shumba and Nishumbha. So that's the longest chapter. It's in that chapter that you meet the Saptamatrikas. It's not a coincidence that in the chapter, fighting sattva, you get all your cremation ground Kapalika imagery. Because that's what it's for. Arguably, the whole like canon of Shaivism, in its Kaula form, is to combat sattva, having mastered sattva, like we argued a few weeks ago. It's the final fight, if you will, to go beyond a mind that takes so much pride in its own purity and holiness. It is in unholiness that one discovers freedom. It is in holiness that one gets out of the bondage of the world. But it is in unholiness and impurity that one gets out of the bondage of the mind. And the world is nothing but one part of the mind. So that's all there in the 3 chapters, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And of course, the demons of the Chandi all match. And the forms of Ma that you encounter in the Chandi also match those gunas. So Ma in the Tamoguna aspect is called Mahakali. Ma in her Rajoguna aspect is called Mahalakshmi. And Ma in her Sattva Guna aspect is called Maha Saraswati. Now, those names, Maha, in front of Kali, Durga, and Saraswati, they're very important because those names point to the fact that these aren't the exoteric forms of Lakshmi and Saraswati or Kali that you might have been encountering. So it's not Saraswati in the sense that she's the goddess of knowledge. She's not that, but this is a older tantric form of Saraswati. And Mahalakshmi, oh my God, she's kind of a badass. She's a warrior goddess. In some traditions, she's Eka Vira, meaning she doesn't have a consort. She's like a standalone goddess of war. So Mahalakshmi is the Rajoguna goddess. She's of the three the most intoxicated of them, the most kind of boisterous and rambunctious of them. Unsurprisingly, she's my favorite also in the three. But Mahalakshmi, she's the one who defeats Mahishasura. And so when you see pictures of the Chandi, often the iconography is of Mahalakshmi actually, with her 18 arms, destroying Chamunda. But Mahisha. But interestingly, in this form, she's called Mahisha Mardini or Mahishasura Mardini, the one who destroys. Mardini being the feminine noun form, the killer of or the destroyer of the buffalo demon. And this image is as old as Indian civilization, probably even older. So this is the one that appears in the Indus Harappan Valley, in the Indus Saraswati Valley, in those cuneiform tablets, like I mentioned about an hour ago. So that idea of Chamunda, Kālī, Saraswati, Durgā, Lakshmi, like all of these are just various names describing the same person. But the three chapters of the text walk you through three different energies of the deity. And of course, there are bija mantras associated to each of these chapters. So when you practice with the mantra like the Navarna mantra, which is arguably the Chandi mantra par excellence, there are three bija mantras in that Navarna mantra. I'm not going to speak them. These are very secret things. But in the Chandi, there are these three Navarna mantras, and they correspond to the three chapters and the three forms of the goddess. Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. So 13 chapters, three stories, rather, 3 episodes, 3 acts, 700 verses. But before any of this, before you get into the text proper, there are 3 auxiliary, or I guess you could say preliminary hymns that are often chanted along with the Chandi. They are the Argala Stotram, the Kilaka Stotram, and the Devī Kavacham. These 3. Sometimes Kavacham is not chanted, just the first two, Argala and Kilaka are chanted. But it's argued that when you chant the Chandi, you should chant these first. Now, some people will not be chanting the Chandi. They'll just be chanting these 3. Every single day for the next 9 nights, they might just light a candle or a deepa and chant Argala. Or they might just do Argala and Kilaka. Or maybe just Argala, Kilaka, Kavacham, like that. I want to introduce you to another preliminary hymn, which might also be kind of important. It is said that because the Chandi is so powerful, it is thus cursed by a few sages, because they don't want this power to be so freely available. Naturally, because if you give children hand grenades, they'll hurt themselves and others. So you have to put the pin in the hand grenade. And Swami Bhajanananda Saraswati at the Kālī Mandir made this point one time, that the Kilaka, which means pin, Kilaka has the connotation of door hinge. When you open a door, there's like a peg and the door swings on the peg. That's a Kilaka. It's sometimes translated as a nail or as a peg, but really it means like the hinge, which allows something to move. But Swami Bhajanananda Saraswati at the Kālī Mandir in Laguna Beach, he gave a beautiful metaphor. I never heard this before. I think it was his idea. The Kilaka is like a pin in a hand grenade. When you pull it out, only then will the thing blow up. So it's argued that if you don't chant the Kilaka, you're not removing the pin, you're not going to get the explosive effect of the Chandi. So you have to chant the Kilaka before you chant the Chandi. But many people are chanting the Kilaka. They're pulling the pin out and they've got a hand grenade, but most people are children. So you have to be careful. You can't just play around with these things. These are powerful things. In the beginning, you might not believe that. They might just be a bunch of Sanskrit words in a text. You're like, whatever. And then when you actually start working with this text, you realize, oh my God, there are things about the mind, relationships between mind and language, sound and being, that science hasn't even scratched the surface of. They're beginning to see the power of color and the power of symbol and the power of sound. But these are sciences that are ancient. And they have a thing or two to teach us moderns about the relationship between sound and thought. They're powerful. These mantras are powerful, and they're no joking matter. And often people chant the Chandi and they discover that for themselves. But to protect them from coming to harm, very responsible sages like Brahma and Vasishta and others, I think, which sages? Vishwamitra, there are some sages, they put a curse on it. They cursed the Chandi. But by curse, I think it's like just a protection. So they put a shapa. Shapa, the word literally means curse, but it blocks the powers of the Chandi from being accessed. Even if you chant the Argala, even if you chant the Kilaka, Brahma, Vasishta, and Vishwamitra. Exactly. These are the 3 sages who cursed the Chandi. So even if you do all the stuff, right? Like you do the whole Chandi, chances are you're not getting the maximum benefit from it. That's the claim, at least. To what extent you want to believe these claims is up to you. There are many people who are chanting the Chandi without these preliminary hymns, and they're doing just fine. Because really, it's that devotion and sincerity that counts the most. But then again, there's a tradition surrounding all of this, and the purpose of our conversation this evening is to discuss that tradition a little bit and maybe to cover our bases. Like, if we can, we might as well try to do things according to how we were taught by the tradition, by those who came before us. And while doing that, we should give ourselves room to experiment and to make it our own. So that being said, the Shapa Vimochana Stotram is another hymn I'd like to introduce you to. Shapa means curse, Vimochana means the removal, and Stotram means hymn. So Shapa Vimochana Stotram means the curse removal hymn. So if you were to put all of this together, it would make sense then to start your practice with this hymn. Shapa Vimochana Stotram, remove the curse, then do Argala Stotram to create that sense of safety and security as you enter into the Chandi. Then the Kilaka, which pulls the pin out, and then you can start the Chandi. But if you want, you can add an additional thing called the Kavacham. And by the way, I've often recommended just chanting the Kavacham, especially before you go into places like cremation grounds, or even before you go into a difficult conversation. And by the way, I'm saying a lot of Sanskrit words, don't worry. I'm gonna show you a document soon where you'll see all of them in print, okay? But the Kavacham means armor, and so chanting the Kavacham is like a way to protect yourself energetically. It could be very helpful before going into the Smashan, which is of course an important practice for the Kaulas. And I would even argue before going into a difficult conversation with your spouse or before going into the city or something, before exposing yourself to all sorts of energies, it's nice to just, I don't know, shield up or something. And there's also a tradition of this in Christianity. It's called the St. Patrick's breastplate prayer. So it's a Gaelic prayer. It's in Gaelic. It's an old Gaelic, I think, but there are English translations. It's called St. Patrick's breastplate, and chanting it in Gaelic is so powerful. I don't know how, obviously, but it's very similar cultures, these Indo-European traditions. And so there, the prayer says, Christ in front, Christ behind me, Christ to my left, Christ to my right, Christ above, Christ below. It's like fencing off the regions with Christ. And exactly that is happening in the Devi Kavacham, where you're fencing off the quarters, as it were, with all the various deities. And it's maximally rich with goddesses. There's a goddess that protects your fingernails, a goddess that protects your hair, a goddess specifically that protects the breast and that protects the waist and that protects the teeth. You can imagine that's quite important when there's no dentist. Arguably, it's more important now that there are like all these dentists. Like you need, so they don't scam you. You need this hymn so your teeth will be safe and your bones will be safe. And there are magical means to ensure health, wealth, beauty, and protection from your enemies, which is obviously in that world from which the text comes, way more important, way more central to life, given the prevalence of disease and enemies and all sorts of things. So, of course, we moderns might not appreciate the role of mantra, of magic in our day-to-day lives until we do. And of course, I'm literally preaching to the choir here. But the Kavacham is an armor. And many traditions have very similar armors. You know, even in Western ceremonial magic, there's this sense of like fencing off the quarters with the archangels, for instance. Thinking of like Raphael in the east, and thinking of Michael in the south, and Gabriel in the west, and Oriel in the north, and sometimes they add angels above and below. So there's this kind of like Gentile Kabbalah tradition where we take angels from the Old Testament or angels from the wider kind of Gnostic literature, and we think of ourselves as being surrounded by them. So it's a very old tradition. It's there in the Gaelic traditions. It's in even modern iterations of Western ceremonial magic. And of course, in shamanic tradition, by shamanic I mean autochthonous traditions in South America, the idea of calling certain spirits in certain directions, etc. Now, the Kavacham is mantric. Wait, the whole Chandi is mantric. That means you don't have to worry so much about its meaning. Although knowing its meaning can add so much to the devotional flavor and fervor of the text. So when you chant the Chandi, knowing what the Sanskrit words are saying, that brings so much to the practice, obviously. But it's not necessary. To get the magical effects of the Chandi, one merely needs to say the words. Which brings me to another point. I'm going to show you a document soon with all of these things. But you should note that the sadhana is actually quite easy. Just chant the damn thing. Like, just say them. Say the words. That's it. Just say the mantras. Like, it couldn't be simpler than that. And some at this point we ask about pronunciation, and it reminds me of that scene from the Harry Potter movies where Hermione is like, it's Leviosa. Right? It's Leviosa, right? Like there's a way to say it because if you say it differently, you might get a different result. So Wingardium, fuck, I didn't take that class. You know how there's a defense against the dark arts class? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm teaching the dark arts class, so I don't know anything about that curriculum. But if you say the word, it has a sound which has a certain effect on the psyche, on the body, on the air around you, and there's a certain configuration of sound that is trying to be accessed here. So, as far as possible, pronunciation should be to the best of our ability observed, but not so much that it becomes an inhibiting factor in your engaging with the Chandi. So obviously, the one goddess knows that she alone is being called out to by all her children, and she has special fondness for the one who doesn't know how to say her name. You know, we give this metaphor a lot. Think about a mother who has, I don't know, 10 children. And in India, of course, there are many children. Now, the eldest might be able to say mother or something, like articulate her name. Shyama Sundari Devi. If she's, if he's really upset and wanting to be disrespectful, he can say her whole name maybe because he's the eldest. And of course, he's developed his tongue and his understanding. He's able to articulate her name. Now, the youngest at most might only be able to say, oh, oh. And the middle child might say ma, ma, ma. And most of the children are probably saying ma. Now, the mother, notice, has a special fondness for the youngest one, the one who is absolutely inept and unable to pronounce her name. That worst horse is the best horse kind of Zen idea. So, like, when somebody really doesn't know what they're doing, but they try anyway with utmost sincerity, that I think pleases the mother more than a proud scholar who just like is able to rattle off Sanskrit verses because they have a very posh and polished education growing up. It's sincerity that matters more than anything. So, I think when it comes to pronunciation, we sincerely do our best and surrender the rest. And what does that look like? It means mastering IAST because a lot of you are probably going to be working with transliterations, not Devanagari. And if you're new to Devanagari for something like this, I would suggest the transliterations so that you'll have a easier time of it, just because the focus here is pronunciation, and IAST is something that you can master very quickly. You just have to understand what the diacritical marks mean. So if there's a line over the A, it would be a long sound as opposed to a short sound. So it'd be kat yayani. A long line over the I would be a long E sound. So just practicing your matrika can be very helpful. I, u, ra, la, a. So all the E sounds are actually A. They're long sound. A. It's like Yogeshwari, Kuleshwari, right? A. So O, O, and of course and ah. The visarga can be so important to learn. So there's those basic vowel sounds. Ra, la, a, I, o, ow. Just like learning those 16 vowels can be really helpful. Now, of course, the aspirated sounds might give us some trouble. So ka, ka, ga, ga, and of course nga. Like just learning those sounds and practicing those sounds on their own can be so important. By the way, you guys, in the most esoteric manuals, ritual manuals of our tradition, so many of the mantras are just matrika and malini. So just basically these vowel sounds and consonant sounds. And sometimes there's samputa, meaning they're fenced. So it'll be like cream, cream, ang, cream, ing, cream, im, cream, like that. Those are like the mantras that we work with in the context of nyasa. And in so much of what we do in the higher levels of Tantra, it just requires a basic familiarity with sets or groups of phonemes. Matrika is the one to learn, of course, because that's the one that's most commonly used. But there are other sets like Malini, which starts with na and ends with pa. Anyway, that's not something we need to discuss right now. But importantly, the thing I really want to get at is this. If you practice matrika, and of course it's nice to have done that work beforehand, now don't worry about it. Now focus on the Chandi Parayana or the sadhana that we're going to describe in just a few moments. Once you've got your sounds down, it's only a matter of sight reading them. So when you look at the text, it should be quite easy for you to know what a word sounds like just by seeing it. So maybe I could pull up a whiteboard now, and then let's try something. Okay, so if I have this sound, and sorry, this is going to be horrible because kind of hard to draw on this. So let's say I just have this, okay? So this sound in Devanagari, when you transliterate it, because there's a long ka, you're going to see this long ka sound like that. And because there's a long li, you're going to see this long e sound. So this sound would be Kālī, Kālī, like that, right? So it wouldn't be Kali, it wouldn't be Kali, it wouldn't be Kali, it would be Kālī, Kālī. So all you have to do is see where these lines are. Now, another thing that I think will kind of trip people up is the dot under like the N or something like that. So if you see a dot under a T or a dot under a D or a dot under an N, these are retroflex sounds, right? So they would be like, oh, sorry, I kicked everyone off the whiteboard because I think that was it. Sorry if you didn't get on the whiteboard, but it's basically just I was showing ka and li and how ka li gets transliterated. So for instance, cha munda or even chandi. So that sound munda, munda, cha munda, chandika. So those sounds are very important because you'll see that so much of the text uses sounds like that, where the tongue strikes the upper palate of the mouth. So that pronunciation might be important. So it's like the dot under the, for instance, hatha yoga, hatha yoga, hatha, not hatha, hatha yoga. Just notice how different it feels to say hatha yoga as opposed to hatha yoga. How different it feels to say Kathopanishad, Upanishad, Upanishad. So there's like a sound. And of course, for pronunciation, Tāntrik ji or Bhairavanand ji, he's the one to go to for all of this. And he's graciously volunteered his time to chant the Chandi with all of you. I'll leave it to him to tell you when and where, but it's all happening over the course of this next week on Discord. He's just going to be chanting the Chandi. Anyway, pronunciation is important, and chanting with Bhairavanand is a good opportunity to kind of practice your pronunciations because he will chant and then have voice memos or something, and then you can listen to him chanting and you can chant after him or along with him and practice in that way. Or you can just get together with him live. I think he does like voice calls on Discord or something. He goes into the Discord voice room or whatever. Sorry, I'm really showing my age right now. I don't know what it's called. The voice chat, the voice room, the place where everyone goes in like their mic. You know what I mean. Anyway, there's a chanting practice that he's doing. So chanting together can be really good. Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also, as the Christ points out. So it could be good to chant together, get some people together, chant together. There's lots of stuff on the internet, like YouTube videos that you can chant along to. But look, even if you don't have YouTube videos to reference, even if you aren't chanting along with somebody like Bhairav Anand, whose pronunciation is really good, just having some familiarity with the transliteration, meaning the diacritical signs, like the long A's and the long I's, that will help you chant the text. And then just doing your best to get the best possible pronunciation of each of the phonemes, that's going to give you the best results. So these are just like best practices, right? But that doesn't mean you have to like religiously follow them. Haha, pardon the pun. It's just there to ensure that we get the most out of our practice so that we can be the most present and most attentive and most sincere. But I think it will still be valuable to read the whole thing out in some English transliteration. Even that might be really, really powerful. And I've seen it done where people just read it cover to cover in English without ever interfacing with the Sanskrit, and they experience a very powerful transformative effect. I've seen people brought to tears. I've seen people like relive traumas just by reading it out in English. Just the imagery alone is powerful enough to do that. So that being said, there are a few general tidbit rules when it comes to chanting the Chandi. Generally, we say because of the mantric power of the text, we treat it with reverence and care. One should take a bath, we often say, wear fresh clothes, and come and sit in a spot where there's like an asan. So we always sit on top of something. So I'm sitting on top of deerskin right now. That's recommended in the Bhagavad Gita, but you can sit on top of any cloth or any kind of cushion or something. Just don't sit on the floor. And it's kind of like inauspicious actually to just sit directly on the ground. There should be an asan, meaning at least one cloth or something between you and the ground. Ritually, that's kind of recommended. So I don't like cushions or anything like that. I like a nice flat surface. So I like a nice thin deer skin. I used to for a long time use just like stuff like this, like just little kind of things like that. So just a mat or something that you can put on the ground. And when you sit down, it's nice to be facing either east or north, or as we say in the chapter 29, Kaula Marga type, northeast. North is for moksha, we argue. East is for bhoga. Northeast is for both moksha and bhoga, which are both valid tantric goals and both the goals that the Chandi are helping you attain. So it makes sense to face either north or northeast. Now we often say the Chandi should be chanted in the daytime, but I'm going to admit to all of you, full disclosure, I usually do my practices at night. Almost always I do my pujas at night, and so naturally during the course of Navaratri, I'm going to be doing my pujas at night. Now that's peculiar to my sadhana, of course, because I worship Bhairava and Kālī, and the kind of energies that I like to work with, they are usually nighttime sort of energies. And plus, that's the only time I'm up. So it makes sense then that I would be chanting the Chandi at night, though it is to some extent not encouraged because there are a lot of demons and a lot of dark energies that are being called to the conscious mind when we chant the Chandi. So often we say we should chant during the daytime. In any case, though, I will say this, and this is something I do religiously follow. Whenever chanting the Chandi, one should have a deepa lit. And I don't have Deepa Leela with me right now, but she's the best at keeping all the Deepas lit. But one should always have a Deepa lit. And so I was going to show you some different versions of Deepas. It's nice to have one that will be lit for a long time so that you can chant the day's sadhana, but it just having one light lit is very important. Practicing fire safety, of course. And for many people, their entire Navaratri sadhana, and it's a powerful sadhana, is just keeping the Deepa Leela lit. They have an altar room, and their only job is to just keep that fire burning and to watch it, maybe. Watching the flame is one of the greatest things that we as a people have ever done. In all of our various cultures, it's watching a fire that has enabled us to become so powerful in terms of our mind. It taught us presence, attentiveness. It taught us care. Caring for a fire is one of the best things you can do because, like, our civilizations depended on it. Without the fire, there is no protection from dangerous animals and insects. Without the fire, we couldn't see at night. The fire gave us warmth. It allowed us to cook our food and diversify our food, which helped develop our brains. The interfacing with the fire developed our imagination, developed our storytelling. The power of the flame coupled with mantras. Oh my God, there's no overestimating the power of a dhuni. Is that mayonnaise, Viranatha? No, it's ghee. It's a little squeeze bottle of ghee. But like the fire is so important. He was holding up a lamp and a bottle of what looked like mayonnaise. And I'm like, is that kerosene? I'm like, he looked like he was ready for some mischief. Wait, I'm gonna put him on right now. Just hold that pose. Like he looks like something mischievous is about to happen here. I'm like, is that mayo? Is he about to eat that? Like, did my bit on Chamunda and her insatiable appetite inspire him? Like, what exactly is this? Somebody take a photo and meme it because I don't know what's going on here, but it's awesome. So anyway, yeah, ghee in a squeeze bottle is truly genius. So much about this man is truly genius. Will not confine him to just the ghee in the squeeze bottle. But now we have this idea of the dhuni or the sacred fire which we keep lit during the course of sadhana. And what to say of Navaratri, like all sadhanas, arguably we do with the lit lamp. And keeping that lamp lit is itself a sadhana. Just watching the lamp, being with the fire. So much of what we've learned here in our time as humans, we've learned through the fire. We've learned from looking at fire. So candle, lamp, any kind of flame. But that being said, I mean, be careful. It's one of those things that, like Ma, can wreck your shit if you're not careful. And so with this sadhana, we have to really abide by fire safety. And there's Lala, Jai Mahalaleshwari. So inspired and happy to see. So now the important thing about the fire is that it purifies the space. So whatever energies come up, having open flames can be helpful because it will devour that energy and purify that energy. And it's a living being. So it's like you're with someone, you're with your friends, they're there with you, the fires are lit, and you might be surprised how much is communicated through the flame. So Mother speaks through the flame. Think of the flame as like your scrying tool, your crystal ball, to use the a stereotyped image, or your black mirror or something in which you can look and interface with your subconscious mind. And also, I think this has been studied even in an academic scientific context. It does something to your brain. Like people find that they're much more able to relax when fire is lit. It's something epigenetic, maybe. I don't know. But there's something to it. I don't know. I don't know what the literature is academically and scientifically, but there's a reason why when we go on dates, it sets the vibe. It's like romantic, right? And if your smoke alarms will allow, the problem with these is that they don't last too long. So you have to keep refilling it. But you can get a little homa kunda or something like that. Of course, we're going to be doing a lot of homas in the course of the next week. of course, we'll be very much at a fire, at a dhuni, at a homa, doing mantras. But when we're indoors, just one candle. Oh my God, it goes such a long way. Of course, practicing fire safety. So our general rule is take a bath, wear fresh clothes, come and sit on an asan facing north or east or northeast. And generally, we say chant during the daytime and always have a candle or some kind of lamp lit. Just one lamp is enough for chanting the Chandi. Now, I like to chant at night. You should know there is one hymn that is specifically enjoined for the nighttime. So it can be chanted anytime, but it's okay to chant at night. And that's called the Tantrokta Ratri Sutkam. It's Brahma's hymn or Brahma Dikrita Devi Stutihi. I'll show you all these hymns in just a few moments. So that hymn can be chanted at night. Yeah, so north we say is for moksha. At least this is according to Abhinavagupta. North is for moksha, east is for bhoga. No, Patrick G is like, which way for bhoga again? Asking for a friend, you guys. Which way for the yoginis and their orgies and stuff? I'm just asking for a friend. I mean, like, I'm looking north. I mean, I'm just like, just academically for science, which way gives you the siddhis again? East for siddhis, north for moksha. Both are great. Get them both, right? We argue that. We're tantrikas. We have no problem with such things. So northeast, Abhinavagupta recommends. And the Chandi itself, at the end, you'll see that both goals are attained by the two practitioners that we encounter in the story. Anyway. Um, yeah. And for some sadhanas, we actually do face south or southwest, like for worshipping ghosts and stuff. So, having said all of that, a lamp is lit. There is a hymn that you can chant at night, but though I do tend to like chanting anytime, but specifically I tend to chant at night, but it is said that we should chant during the daytime. And Shiva's I might remark that at least in most of the padhatis that I've seen in the Vamachara, they tend to be northeast or something like that, north or northeast. In fact, Vama means north. Is that interesting? Dakshina means right, because the ritual practitioner in the Vedic context would almost always be facing east. So when you say Dakshina, you're actually saying right, but you're actually saying south. The word Dakshina means south, and the word Vama actually means north. So Vamachara or left hand path practices tend to be focused to the north. In fact, they might even be focused on moksha. Is that interesting? It kind of confounds our popular understanding of Vamachara because we think Vamachara means siddhis and stuff. But no, actually, so many of the Vamachara texts are just about dramatic, sudden sadhanas to give you total liberation, like the early ascetics of the tradition, the Atimargins and whatnot. Yeah, I love you, G. Okay, so having said all of that, this is like the basic kind of outline of the Chandi sadhana. Where do you access the Chandi? So much of it is available online. So you can just type in Chandi, Devī Māhātmya. You can type in Shapa Vimochana Stotram, Argala Stotram, Kilaka Stotram, Devi Kavacham, etc. Now, as far as possible, we try to find some of these in Devanagari, in transliteration. Unfortunately, I started translating them and then unfortunately, I didn't actually get to it. So you'll see that in the document that I'm about to present to you, some stuff is translated, some stuff isn't, but again, it's not that important. I do recommend this particular edition though. I really like it. This is called the Devī Māhātmya by Swami Jagadishwarananda. So Jagadishwarananda ji, he is a Swami in the Ramakrishna mission, and generally Ramakrishna publications, I trust them a lot because when it comes to things like this, they're some of the best publications available. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in the lineage, but I generally am very happy and satisfied with the books that even the Tirumula, Tirumantiram, my God, the Ramakrishna mission stuff, it's it's Swamiji's mission. So Swami Vivekananda saw to it that quality control is like, they're very efficient workers, you could say. So it's somewhat of an efficient book, and in it, there are two versions. The other version is at my altar, but there's like a blue, I mean, I don't know, the colors vary, but there's a version that's just Devanagari and translation, and there's a version that's just transliteration and translation. I'm not sure if there's one with Devanagari, transliteration, and translation, but be careful, those of you who don't interact with Devanagari, get the right edition. Make sure it's the transliterated one, okay? But both are translated by Swami Jagadishwaranandaji, and I love his translations. They're beautiful, they're elegant and simple, and they're in the footnote form. So that means you can just, it's an easy text to carry around and to hold. But what I like about it is as you chant the verses, there are verse by verse transliterations. And so this makes the text like really usable. So in terms of user friendliness, in terms of like translation efficiency or translation fidelity, I guess you could say. This is my favorite text, and this is the one that I generally recommend for the community. Now, when we say in praise of the goddess, Devaratta Kaliji, of course, did a wonderful job in putting that book together. My Guru Deva was involved in that project also and helped Devaratta Kaliji, who is living here actually in San Diego, passed away very recently. So, his book is masterful, beautiful, and the introduction is really beautiful. It's a bit thick though, so it's kind of hard to it's hard to like in terms of user friendliness. I think this book kind of outscores it in terms of its simplicity, but in terms of detail and richness, like that book has translations, transliterations, and Devanagari. It has Devi Sutkam and some things. This one also has Devi Sutkam in it, some auxiliary hymns like that. So both are great. Both are great. And as long as you have access to something which gives you the Argala, Kilaka, Kavacham, and all 13 chapters and all 700 verses, that's all that you'll require. And I usually recommend hard copies because it's like, nice to carry around. That being said, though, we are in the age of the internet and almost all of this is available online. So there's no reason why you have to purchase anything. Much of this is, even these books, the ones that I just showed you, a lot of them are available in PDF form on the internet. And another reason why I like Ramakrishna Mission is they're not really interested in, it doesn't seem like they're interested at least in commercialism. So the books tend to be like really cheap. They tend to be like the most affordable versions of these available. And for that, I think quite good and reliable versions. So that's maybe what you need. To start the sadhana, at the very least, you're going to need to have the text, which we've been talking about for the last hour and a half or so. So having that text is so important. And some of the hymns that I just mentioned, like the Shapa Vimochana Stotram, will not be included in the text. So, with that said, we do have a little chanting document that I wanted to show you. So, let me. And by the way, we do this every year together. And I think as we grow, of course, the document grows also. And we're learning so much. Every year we grow a bit more, we learn a bit more. And so this document was made like what, like 2 years ago or something? And so it's to be updated, but I like it just because it gives you an outline of what is to be done. So here you'll see there's a preliminary sadhana. By the way, before I walk you through these documents, that's what's going to happen next. I've already talked about the Chandi and hopefully inspired you to pick up a Chandi sadhana, which we typically do during Navaratri. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you can see, but there's a gata behind me. Don't let me forget, but I want to talk about the gata sthapana also, the establishing of mother's pot. It's over there. I don't want to move her. I actually haven't installed her yet. I'm waiting for tonight to fill the gata and do all the mantras. But she's over there. I don't want to move her. Later, I'll take a picture and put it in the Discord. Let me install her first, and then I'll put the picture in the Discord and whatnot. But remind me, okay, before we finish this conversation, I do want to talk about Ghata Sthapana a little bit, which is the ritual for today. It's what we do on this day in the context of Navaratri. So now let's talk about the sadhana. So check this out, you guys. This is something we do during Navaratri, but it's not limited to Navaratri. The sadhana you're going to learn now can be performed by anyone every single day for the rest of your life, and it will be a wonderful sadhana. That being said, you'll encounter many communities, of course, that will say not anybody can do this and not everybody should. It's something that you should be initiated into. So we'll say that like initiation into Navarna mantra, the 9 syllable mantra, is usually recommended before picking up a Chandi sadhana, because there is a mantra that goes with the Chandi. And so being initiated by a guru into that mantra or into any other Shakti mantra, any other Devi mantra, is usually a prerequisite for chanting the Chandi. That's going to be true of almost all Tāntrik sadhanas, right? So even Kadagamala Stotram, before you can practice the Vamakeshvari Mata Tantra, that is, before you can do Lalita Puja and things like that, it's often recommended that you take some Diksha or something into Bala Mantra or something like that. So you'll see this rhetoric, obviously, that you should get Diksha before you attempt these sadhanas. That being said, I will argue for the case of sincerity. Like if somebody is sincerely doing the sadhana, um, who can gatekeep God? Like she's your very own mother. Nobody can tell you that you're not allowed to worship her or approach her in this way. This is an empowered means of worshiping God. And my conviction is that during the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, it is the springtime of spirituality. It is time for democratization of power. The reason why we're revealing all of this is not because we don't believe it has power. Obviously, we understand the power of these texts, but we also believe that power should not be held by the chosen few. It should not be kept behind closed doors. It should be made the common property of every man, woman, person, and child. So it's for everyone because this is a text about everyone's mother. So that being said, I often encourage anyone and everyone who is interested to get involved somehow. So the sadhana I'm going to suggest now is good for Navaratri. It's good for all of our lives. And by the way, it's not just that there's one Navaratri. There are at least four, if not eight. You know, there's like every season there's a Navaratri. The Chaitra Navaratri. This Durga Navaratri is actually something that Rama created, right? Because Rama needed to worship Durga before he fought Ravana in that story, the Ramayana. But because it was a season to worship goddess Durga, he prayed so fervently that goddess Durga made another Navaratri for him so that he could worship her properly and then win the battle with Ravana. But you know what's beautiful about this story? He prayed to Durga. Durga wasn't like, I'm satisfied with your prayer, my child. Now go fight Ravana. I will make sure you kick his ass. No, Durga was like, wow, I'm so pleased with your prayer. I'm going to create another Navaratri so you can engage in intense, unbelievable sadhanas and then you will destroy Ravana. What does this mean? It means, I'm going to argue, that Navaratri sadhana is devotional, but it's also tantric. And by tantric, I mean it's magical. It has an energetic property that is also worth considering. So even though he already has the favor of the goddess, it's still valuable for Rama. Sorry, I'm just going to refill my Deepa. It's still valuable now for Rama to. This is where I could use the squeeze bottle. It's still valuable for Rama to perform Navaratri sadhana. So I just want you to know that like you're in very good company. As you perform the sadhana, you'll be performing the worship of the goddess along with some of the greatest warriors India has ever known, like Rama, like Sri Krishna and Sri Arjuna. It's a wonderful thing to think about being part of that lineage of worshippers of Ma. Anyway, so there are many Navaratris. Four, some communities will argue there are eight Navaratris. This is, of course, the biggest one, the most widely celebrated one. So this is a sadhana that's good for all Navaratris. So learning the sadhana now can be very helpful because you can apply this to any and all Navaratris, but you can also do it literally every day for the rest of your life. And it's such a rewarding and beautiful sadhana. I used to do it every day, and then slowly I kind of phased it out and only do it during Navaratri. But every time Navaratri comes, I'm like a kid during Christmas. I'm so excited because I love this text so much. And every time I do it, I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this every day now because the power of it is just unbelievable. Like I was saying an hour and a half ago, there really isn't anything like the Chandi. And it's ancient and it's still around for a reason. Okay, so let's get into it if you don't mind. Here's the sadhana. I know we do this every single year. Every year during Navaratri, I walk you through the document and we talk about what the sadhana looks like and we practice it a little bit together. And so I hope you won't find this repetitive. I should point you to this resource. When you go to the Patreon into the collections over here. So if you click into collections, right? Just scroll down a little bit and you'll see there's a playlist of 33 lectures. That's a nice number actually. Chandi and Navaratri. So if you click into the Chandi and Navaratri playlist, you'll see there's so many lectures. There's this sadhana suggestion. There's a whole thing on the Kavacham, uh, something on the Mahishasura Mardini Stotram, Siddha Kunjika Stotram. Some practices too. There's like sadhanas here where we do some Hatha Yoga, a lot of stuff. So Chamunda, we had a lecture on Chamunda, on Ashtamatrikas, even the Kadagamala Stotram for the fifth day when we worship Lalita. There's a lecture on proper pronunciation. Some of you are asking that question a lot. That might be a nice lecture. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff here. And so the stuff that I'm going to say now might be a little repetitive, but I find that every time we do this, something new gets added. You know what? There's even more stuff. Sorry, if I load more. Here we recite the whole Chandi and we do a Devi Puja. Stuff like that, you know. So there's all this stuff. Um, for you. Some of these don't exist anymore because of the YouTube ban. But most of them are playable. So you can just come to this thing and review any and all of what we're talking about now. So that resource is there for you. Okay. So having said that, I hope you won't find this repetitive. Let's just go into the document now. And by the way, there are many different versions of this resource. So I'm such a fool, Asha and Viranatha. I know you put the link in. Don't put it again. I'll find it. I'll find it. But Asha and Viranatha have really good documents that I want to show you. This is the document that we were working on. And it's going to sketch out a few things. The first thing is going to give you a preliminary sadhana. So before you chant the Chandi, and again, all you have to do is chant the thing. That's the beauty of the Chandi. There's nothing more. Like the Chandi itself tells you that you don't need to do any special pujas. You just chant the thing. From beginning to end, you can just chant it and you'll get the benefits of it. But that being said, there is some kind of sadhana stuff that you can do, some preliminary ritualism that you might like to do. So here's what you can do. So every day before you start chanting, take a bath, put on fresh clothes, come sit at your altar, and of course, see, we are learning. So we can add that. northeast, and then rinse the mouth. So I'm going to show you now how to do that. Can you see my screen, by the way? Am I like, hold on. You can see, okay. So I've got a little kamandalu here. Now you can take any vessel, of course, any vessel. And by the way, let me just put on a tanpura for you. So these mantras. Okay. So you can take any vessel whatsoever, or like a spoon with water even, and then pour some water with your left hand, the vessel is in the left hand, pour it into your right hand like that. And by the way, you can make a nice cup if you take your thumb and place it behind the middle finger of your right hand. So that creates like a little cup in which the water can be poured. So pour a little water. Now look at that water and say, Om Aim Atma Tattvaya Swaha, and sip it. Now, Atma means self, Tattva means reality. So this is the first principle of Shaivism called Pashu, the self. So we're saying Om Aim Atma Tattvaya Swaha. And sometimes you might see this as Shodayami Swaha, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. So Om Aim Atma Tattvaya Swaha. That was the first sip. You might like to rinse your hands, and then here's the second sip. Om Harim Vidyā Tattvaya Swaha. This is the second principle in Shaivism, known as Pasha or Shakti, Vidyā it's called. Now the third sip. Om Klim Shiva Tattvaya Swaha. Of course, you can rinse your hands between all the sips or just take 3 consecutive sips. Now think that you've purified the body, speech, and mind, or body, subtle body, causal body. Also, those of you who have taken Diksha into Navarna Mantra, here are your, you can see clearly what's going on. And you can see the 3 chapters of the Chandi. You can see there's Tamoguna, Rajaguna, Sattvaguna. So all of this is included, of course, in your mantra, but it's also included in the Chandi. And you're doing a kind of, what do you call it? Achaman, purification. So start with that. Then, if you want, there's one final mantra, because 3 always resolves to 4. So when you have any principle of 3, you always add 1. So the 4th reconciling principle, you say all the bijas together. Om Aim Hrim Klim Sarvatattvaya Swaha. And this is where you sprinkle the water all around you. Now feel that everything around you and within you has been purified. And of course, if you've just taken a bath and you're wearing fresh clothes and you're sitting at your altar, the whole thing just feels so fresh and so pure. And we'll take some questions eventually also. Okay, now put your palms together in prayer mudra. This mantra is from verse 8 of chapter 5 of the Chandi. So the claim is that just by remembering the goddess, you are made instantly pure. It's kind of like the Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam kind of idea, or kind of like Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarva Vastham Gato Piva Yasmaret Pundari Kaksham Sabhaya Vyantara Shuchi. Yasmaret, whoever remembers the Lord becomes pure, bhaya outside and inside also. So just like that mantra, we use this mantra from the Chandi. So we'll chant it together now. Here it is in transliteration, and here it is in Devanagari. Namo Devī Māhātmya Shivaye Satatam Namaha Namah Prakritye Bhadraye Niyata Pranata Smatam. And the mantra basically says, Namo Devī, salutations to the goddess. Mahadevya, salutations to the supreme goddess. Shivaye, isn't that beautiful? Shiva as in the male form, Shiva as in the feminine noun. So Shivaye, Satatam means always, Namaha. So always salutations always to she who is always auspicious, to she who is the goddess, who is the supreme goddess. Namo Prakritye, this is beautiful, to she who is nature, or she who is the creatrix. Bhadraye, to she who is auspicious. Niyata pranata smatam. Niyata, eternally. Niyata pranata smatam. I'm always bowing to you and remembering you. Smaret, I'm always remembering you. So by remembering, by praying to the Divine Mother, one is purified inside and out. So this whole section over here is called Achamanam, and it's nice to feel before you do any sadhana that you've done some kind of purification, Achamanam. Okay, now we're going to do a Panchopachara Puja. Last Thursday, by the way, you guys learned how to do the Manasa version of this, right? So it'd be like Om Lam Prithivi Tattvatmikaye Namaha, like that kind of, Lam, and then Ham, Yam, Ram, Vam, Sang. You learned all of that last week. So there's a way to use mudras from the Vamakeshwari Mata Tantra to do this, but this is like a literal puja, okay? So here's the book. Typically the book is going to be wrapped in red cloth. By the way, the book should not touch your feet, nor should it touch the ground. Yes, the goddess is the foot also. She is the ground. Yes, we're kaulas. We don't care about purity and impurity, but generally these things help create a sense of mindfulness. So should it touch the foot or should it touch the ground? Obviously we don't freak out. That's not the end of the world. We just touch it to our foreheads and we're like, oh ma, sorry, something. You know, like just touch it to your forehead and feel like it's fine. But you want to be mindful about the book. So typically it's wrapped in red cloth when you're not using it. It's placed on the altar. It's the Devī, it's the goddess. You know, once somebody left this book on the floor, on the steps leading up to the temple, and Matriprana Mataji, who at that time was Jagadatri Ma, she brought it back to that person. And she's like, if you love Ma, why did you throw her on the ground and cast her aside like this? It was so sweet. And Jagadatri herself was saying that. I was so touched by that. Anyway, so this book is not a book. It's a collection of mantras. It is the living sonic body of the Divine Mother. So it's to be treated with such reverence and care. It is the murti. In this puja, you don't need an altar. You don't need a murti. Yes, I'll talk about the gata in just a few moments and give you mantras to install the gata. But for now, just note that this book and the mantras which it contains, this is everything. And so this alone is to be worshipped. You don't need to do a murti puja or any kind of gata puja, and just worship the book. So placing the book on the altar, maybe wrapped in a red cloth, just so it doesn't get wet. The first thing you're going to do is offer some fragrance. Now, I've actually run out of flowers. I just got back from Salem, so I didn't have a chance to hit the flowers first, so forgive me. I'm just going to use sindur. So the first mantra here would be Om Esha Ganda Chandikaye Namaha, and you would offer some fragrance. I'm just going to amend this mantra now so I can offer this sindur. Om Idam Sinduram Chandikaye Namaha. So the name for mother here is Chandika. So Chandikaye. Now you can add a bija, of course. You could say Om Aim Hrim Klim Idam Sinduram Chandikaye Namaha if you've taken Diksha into that. Or you can just say Om Esha Ganda Chandikaye Namaha. Next, offer a flower. Om, and again I'm just going to offer some rice actually, just because I don't have any flowers. Om, and let's use the bija mantras. Om Aim Hrim Glim Idam Sachandana Pushpartam Akshatam Chandikaye Namaha. Oh mother, here's some grains of rice in lieu of a fragrant flower. Now let's offer her some incense. Remember never to blow incense out. That's equivalent to spitting on the offerings, which in some cases is desirable, but in this case. And by the way, I'm going to offer with my right hand. I know when we learn left hand rituals, I tell you to offer with the left hand. I'm just going to do this in the Dakshinachara style. So I'm going to hold the incense in my right hand, bell in the left hand, and we're going to literally wave the incense 3 times around the book. Now, there's often an image of the goddess on the book. So I like to just like do it to the image, you know, and wave around the image. So incense, you can say Om Aim Hrim Glim Esha Dhupaha Chandikaye Namaha. Offer some incense. Having offered incense, the next thing is we're going to offer some fire. So I'm going to light a fresh lamp now. The lamp over there is for a different purpose. This is lamp that I'm offering mother. So this is a fresh lamp. Again, we're just going to wave this 3 times around the book while ringing the bell. Om Esha Dhipa Chandikaye Namaha. By the way, optionally, when you wave incense and when you wave the Deepa, you can of course optionally chant some kind of Gayatri like Harim Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumare Dhimahi Tanno Durgi Prachodayat. You can chant things like that. Okay, now we're going to offer some food. Here I have some pockies, of course, mother's snack of choice. So any kind of like fruits, sweets, nuts, whatever. Of course, some of you know how to do all the mudras, right? You know how to do Vang etasme vidyā namaha, Vang etasme vidyā namaha, Vang etasme vidyā namaha, Pat, Yang, Rang, Hum, Vam, Krim, or Hrim, 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 Hrim. Some of you know that whole process where you offer flowers, right? Like you can do that. But again, I'm trying to keep this very simple. So we can just, for now, omit those and just offer food simply. plate of food, we say Om Aim Hrim Glim Idam Naivedyam Chandikaye Namaha, and maybe place that to the right of the book. Yeah, so to your left, to mother's right. So place it to mother's right, which is to your left. Yeah, so just put the food. Okay, so now we've worshipped with the 5 items. Panchopachara puja. Fragrance representing the earth element. Flowers representing the akasha or space element. Incense representing the wind element. Fire representing the fire element. And Naivedyam representing the water or amrita element. So all of the 5 items have been offered to the Divine Mother. It's now time to chant the Chandi. So here we go. The period of worship is 9 nights. So the Chandi itself can be broken up into 9 nights. By the way, I'm thinking of getting rid of these. What am I doing? Oh my god, what am I doing? Okay. Anyway, I'm thinking of getting rid of these. There's some Navadurga sadhanas, like we were talking about that some years back. And so if you want to do Navadurga sadhanas, like there are some mantras for the Navadurgas. Oh, do you like them? Okay, then we'll keep it. But there's like Navadurga sadhana that you can do where you maybe, like on this day for instance, you're thinking of the goddess in the form of Shailaputri, and she has a mantra. And so all of the Devis are invoked with the same bija mantra. Preferably you would have some diksha for this, but even if you don't, it's okay. You just chant this mantra. You can do 1 round of your mala, so 108 repetitions of this mantra, and just to feel the energies of the goddess as Shailaputri. Then you would start chanting the Chandi. Now a lot of these are going to be in here, right? So you would chant the Chandika, Dhyanam, to meditate on Chandika. Then you would meditate on Kālī, the Mahakālī, Dhyanam. And the first day is for the first chapter. So I've listed the number of verses. So there are 104 verses in chapter 1, known as the slaying of Madhu and Kaitaba. Pratamo Dhyayaha. So that's it for day 1. For day 2, you can do a round of this mantra to connect to the energies of Brahmacharini. And then you can do the Mahalakshmi Dhyanam, and you can chant the 2nd and 3rd chapters. On the 4th day, there's 108 of these, and then you can chant the 4th chapter. Sorry, is this the 3rd day? Yeah, sorry, the 3rd day you chant the 4th chapter. On the 4th day, you chant the Maha Saraswati Dhyanam. You chant chapter 5 and chapter 6, and so on. So as you can see, the thing is all broken up in the course of these several days. Now, day 5 is special. Panchami is usually reserved for Lalita. So it's a worship of Tripura Sundari. So here I've listed the Devī Kadagamala Stotram. Many of you know what that is. You've been doing that sadhana for a long time now. You can chant the Lalita Sahasranama. You can do a Sri Chakra Puja, etc. And of course you can do the mantras here. You can do the 7th chapter. On the 6th day you can do the 8th chapter. On the 7th day, this is a very powerful day actually. There's a lot of secret stuff in here actually, I'm noticing now. Then you, Diksha only type things, so forgive me for that. And then there's this, the chapter 9, chapter 10. And I've just added this extra sadhana, which is just contemplate chapter 10 verse 5, which is the most non-dual statement which Mother makes in the whole Chandi. She says, I am all alone in this world. This entire world is nothing but me. Nothing exists here other than me. There are no demons. There's no Satan. There's no bad guy. I alone have become the good guys and the bad guys. Devyāya tatamidam jagadātma shaktya nishesha deva gana shakti samuha murtya tamam bikam akhila deva maharshi pujyam bhaktya natasma vidadhatu shubhani sādhana. She like arranges everything like dolls on a battlefield, all warring with one another. How beautiful. So on Ashtami, there's this chapter 11 that you can chant. Navami, chapters 12 and 13. And that's it. You did it. You've chanted all 13 chapters. You've done all 700 verses. And then there's some closing hymns. So on the 9th day, I typically recommend the prayer of forgiveness. It's actually in this book, I believe. And also the Devī Sutkam, which is 8 verses. It's from the Rik Veda, so it's one of the oldest hymns, and it's one of the mantras, japa mantras actually, that's used in the Chandi tradition. So these are closing hymns. So just note, there are opening hymns also. These are the opening hymns, and they can be done on the first day, and these can be done on the last day only, right? Or I'm gonna suggest something else. Again, this whole thing can be adjusted. You can make it harder or you can make it easier depending on how much time you have. Look, if you have a spouse, if you have a house, if you have a mouse, like things might be difficult, right? Like if you have children, if you have work, please don't overly exert yourself. Like do what's reasonable and what's nourishing and what's manageable. And so you might not be able to chant so much. That being said, you just chant this on the first day and you just chant this on the last day, right? These ones. But you know what? If you guys want, I like to do this. I like to chant these every day. These ones, all these ones, every single day before I do any Chandi recitation. And I like to also chant these every single day before any Chandi, after every Chandi recitation. So I like to bookend my practice with the opening hymns and the closing hymns every single day for 9 nights. But you could also bookend the whole practice. This is called samputa in Sanskrit. Samputa means fencing or closing off. So you could start today with the opening hymns, and maybe we'll do that together after the lecture, and then you can do the closing hymns at the end of the festival. Yeah. So again, some people will chant the whole Chandi all day long. Unfortunately, I don't really have time for that, given the pujas and the purasharanas and whatnot. But some people will just like for 3 hours, 3.5 hours, just chant the whole Chandi every single day. Right, for 9 nights. That's cool. But this is a way to break it up, and it gives you a way to like work with the text over the course of the festival. So that way it's like something that you like contemplate slowly. I'm more of a fan of that kind of style anyway, where you like really, you don't just chant it to chant it, but you're meditating on the verses, contemplating the verses, cogitating on the meanings. So you'll find that in this document, I'm going to put it in the chat in just a few moments. You'll find that in this document, there is the outline for the sadhana, the preliminary sadhana. There's a list of the hymns, the names of the hymns, and also the order in which everything is to be chanted over the course of the 9 nights. Now, of course, this will be helpful. It'll be helpful to have an actual book or an actual resource, so that you can use our chanting document as a guide to navigate the resource. That being said, though, in the document itself, you're going to find that there are some hymns for you. So, for instance, if you scroll down past the things, I should say, there are also alternative sadhanas. So you could just do the 4 hymns, and I've listed the chapters and the verse numbers here for you. So if you want, on each day, you could just do these hymns without having to chant the rest. You could also just chant the Siddha Kunjika Stotram daily, and that's also included. Or you could just chant the Durgā Shapta Shloki daily. These are all like lawyer things. It's like, okay, if you don't have time for the whole Chandi sadhana, don't worry, these are substitutes. Tantra is full of things like that, like substitute this for that, it'll be the same effect, etc., etc. Anyway, here's the Shapa Vimochana Stotram. I've left out the nyasas. I don't think they're that important, though this is a kind of Rishyadi nyasa. So this is the hymn itself, okay? So starting from this verse, Om Hrim Rim Ritaha Sarupinye Madhukaitaba Mardinye Brahma Vashishta Vishwa Mitra Shapada Vimukta Bhava. And of course, you can chant it with any melody. It's 16 beats per line, so it works really nicely with most melodies. Om Hrim Rim Rita Swarupinye Madhu Kaitabha Mardinye Brahma Vashishta Vishwa Mitra Shapada Vimukta Bhava. You can use that Bhagavad Gita style, or you can do Om Hrim Rim Rita Swarupinye Madhu Kaitabha Mardinye Brahma Vashishta Vishwa Mitra Shapada Vimukta Bhava. Om Ram Rakta Swarupinye Mahisha Suramardinye Brahma Vashishta Vishwamitra Shapada Vimukta Bhava. You can chant it in a minor key, major key, like any melody will work. It's such a nice 16 beats. What is very commonly used. So 20 verses, that's the Shapa Vimochana. Here's the Argala Stotram for you in Devanagari and also in transliteration. Unfortunately, I started and then stopped translating it. So here's some translations. And then this is Kilaka. So Kilaka comes after Argala, so you can chant the Kilaka. And then I didn't put the Kavacham in here because I couldn't find one online that I liked. But it's in here. It's in your book. Okay, so there's the Kavacham. And then there's some meditation mantras for Ma. And then we've added the Siddha Kunjika Stotram. Now, this thing is super esoteric. It's got a lot of bija mantras in here, and oh my god, what is that? You didn't see that? Anyway, there are all these like mantras, right, in there. And then this is my favorite hymn, and this can be chanted at night. This is called the Tantrokta Ratri Sutkam. Ratri means nighttime. So this is the hymn that can be chanted at night. It's otherwise known as the Brahma Krita Devī Stutihi. And I chant this one the most. This is my favorite hymn. Again, we started translating it. I think we stopped somewhere towards the end, but here's the hymn. Okay, it's very short. It's a really, really short hymn. So it makes it very easy to chant. And it could be just a cool sadhana just to chant and contemplate this all night. Allison, I like to use the Swami Jagadishwaranandaji Devī Māhātmya. So I'm going to show it here. Oh, by the way, let me just get the link from this, copy link. Okay. So this is the version I like to use. And the covers vary, by the way. This is an older publication. I even have a much older one, which is like blue color, and there's like a yantra, Durga yantra. But now I think they've updated the cover. So here's the version I like by Swami Jagadishwarananda ji. Jagadishwarananda means the one who gets bliss from the Lord of the world. Yeah, so this is the version I like. And then I've just put in the chat here like a link. If you click that link, oh, and thank you, Viranatha has also added the link to the book. Um, no, so that's a different one. Hymns to the Goddess and Hymns to Kālī by Arthur Avalon. That's not what I'm talking about. Although that's a great book. That actually has the Karpuradi Stotram in it, which is kind of cool. There's a translation, albeit a very right-hand path apologetic translation of the Karpuradi Stotram, but a good translation nonetheless. So there is in that book some cool hymns like to Bhuvaneshwari, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Devī Māhātmya by it's just the text in the Markandeya Purana, so it's an ancient text. It's anonymously authored. It's within the context of a much larger Purana, but it's sold as a standalone text of 700 verses, often with auxiliary hymns. Now, by the way, at the back of this book, this is really important. Usually the book comes, in most editions I've seen, it comes with the prayer of forgiveness and also the what is called Devi Sutkam. Yeah, yeah. So it comes with the forgiveness prayer at the end and also Devi Sutkam usually. Those texts are. Oh, no, no, this one doesn't come with the Devi Sutra. Anyway, I'll put that in the document. But this is important. So having the forgiveness hymn, having the Devi Sutkam, having some of the opening hymns like the Argala and the Kilaka, and also the Kavacham. This one does have the Kavacham, which I like. All of those can be really important. So there's so many different versions, of course, on the internet. It's nice to just standardize one for our community. But again, it's just a suggestion, like any version will do. I hope the chanting document, though, will be of some service to you. Now, I do want to say this document I just cobbled together and I'm still working on it, and there's so many pieces left. And by the way, there's the Devi Kadgamala Stotram in it too. So if you scroll all the way down, you'll see the Devi Kadgamala is here with some notes, right? And then also there's this Mahishasura Mardini. So there is, I started translating it and then left it again. So a lot of this is so unfinished, but almost everything I think in here will be helpful to you. My Shastra Mardini, that's the one, like, right? Like that's the one. Like everyone knows that one. Oh, oh, where is it? Is it? Oh, that's the one. That one everyone knows, right? Aigiri Nandini Nandita Medini Vishwa Vinodini Nandanute Girivara Vindhya Shirosini Vasini Vishnu Lasini Jishnu Nute. Right? Like that's the, oh my God. Oh, whoops. That's the hymn that like, oh, really like brings to mind the, oh, I'm sorry, my thing was off. Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramya Kapardini Shaila Sute Jaya Jaya He Mahishasura Mardini Ramya Kapardini Shaila Sute. Sometimes attributed to Sri Ravana, but it's often attributed to Sri Shankara. Anyway, that hymn, oh my God. Like I could imagine just a sadhana of just chanting that every day and contemplating the goddess vanquishing enemies. Anyway, these are all like auxiliary things that can go along with your sadhana. But the main thing though is just to chant the Chandi. That's like the basic sadhana is you just get the book and then try your best to chant as much of it as possible and do your best to follow the preliminary sadhanas, the preliminary hymns, the closing hymns, etc., etc. Now, the point I was trying to make is that in that document there are many things that I think will be kind of helpful to you, but again, it's a pretty bad document actually. I just like kind of cobbled it together and it's pretty nonsense. So Viranatha has polished it up really nicely. He's made a website which I think will have more features as time goes on. It's in a really cool sci-fi font, which I kind of like. It really feels like some kind of science fiction. Like he's a science fiction author, so that makes sense. But you know what I love about this community? This is my favorite thing about this community, that there are these great contributions to the collective, but each contribution carries the charm, personality, and uniqueness of the individual who contributed it. And that's just the way it should be. There's no standardized aesthetic in this community. There's no standardized format for anything. There's just stuff floating around, which to me is exactly what the Indian spiritual tradition is. It's just stuff floating around for the greater good of all interested aspirants. And so I'm really happy we've somehow captured a microcosm of that. So Viranatha, if you don't mind, if you can just drop the website in the chat. And I don't know if you want to maybe say a few things about it, because I think you'd be the best one to introduce it. It's new. I just saw it the other day. I was like, whoa, this man has been busy. This man has been coding. So yeah, I'm just gonna pull it up on the screen here, so you can see it. Just a free resource for anyone in the world to like use, which I love. It's a wonderful contribution to sadhana. So it's cute. You can like, I think you can add your name in here. Just like put your name in there and you can display it as Devanagari, or oh, this is kind of cool. You can do all three. And then oh, and here's time zone, I guess. Wait, what am I? Wait. Oh my God. Tech support, help.
Leave it as auto detect.
Okay, thank you. Leave it. Okay. I am legally permitted to view adult content. That's important. Yes, because I'm a sincere practitioner. I hope, but I think I am. Okay. So now what happens? Save and close. Okay, so here we go. Look at that. Oh my God. They're like things that like. Wait, tech support. What's going on? Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Sorry, you guys. I don't know how
to. Hit Śākta at the top.
What?
Hit Śākta at the top. I'm not sure why everything. There we go. And somewhere down there, if you scroll down a little bit.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Down to the end of that little section, and at the bottom right, it'll say there. Click where it says Navaratri right there in the tags.
Here?
Yeah, right there. Okay.
Party time. Let's get riggedy wrecked, you guys. Look at all of this. Okay, this is awesome. Navaratri sadhana preparation. So all this is what we talked about in that document. So it's basically the document that you saw. It's like formatted really nicely, and they're like dates. And so that's what's really helpful about this, is that it's this resource. It's like a website that interacts with time zones and with tithis and things like that. So it's sensitive to what's going on right now. And so it will tell you when the day starts and when the day ends. Now, it's confusing because we're following the lunar calendar. So the second day is not necessarily tomorrow, right? Like the first day technically started, and this is all in military time. So it's like 12:53 to 12:53 Sunday, actually. And then it kind of ended at 2:25 today. And then now it's already the second day technically until tomorrow 4:21. So like that's what's going to be confusing about this. I'm talking about PST because it adjusted itself to PST where I am. So the confusing thing about Navaratri for many people is that it's following the moon calendar, not the sun calendar. And that can trip a lot of us up when we want to do the sadhana. So that's what's going on here. But anyway, so these are the 9 nights and this is the 10th day. But look, all the stuff, just now, there was the stuff, right? Like Shapa Vimochana Stotram. Here it is. So look at that. This is showing me Devanagari. It's showing me transliteration, and it's showing me translation, right? I could have adjusted it so it's just showing me Devanagari, or just showing me transliteration, or just showing me translation. Now that's really helpful because that helps you decide what kind of experience you want to have with that text. So all the texts, most of them I think are here. We're working on them, of course, but look.
So far all the texts that are listed are up, except for the Chandi itself. I think I've got up to chapter 7, maybe 6.
That's a lot. Like that's, my God, you've been.
Next couple of days I should have the rest up.
That's crazy. I mean, but this is for the ages though, so this is like not something that needs to be finished right away. But the fact that it's here at all, you guys. So anyway, I think the link for this is in the chat. But here, if you click this, it'll take you to the chanting document. Now, this is Asha's document, which is my go-to for all the hymns which we're building, because I wanted to have a place where all the hymns that we chant together could be centralized. Not just the hymns from the Chandi or the hymns pertaining to Navaratri, but like the hymns pertaining to all the stuff that we do together, like Shiva hymns, Kirtan, stuff like that. Basically just like a community songbook. So Asha Devi has put together this really beautiful resource, and it's got a lot of the stuff in here is of course from the Chandi, and it's got some other stuff too, like Kal Bhairav Ashtakam, Shri Kalika Ashtakam, stuff like that. What I love about this, my favorite thing about this, are these jackals. You can follow them home because every time you get to like a thing, you just click on this jackal. Where's the jackal? Here he is. And it'll take you home. I love that. I love these interactive red jackals. Anyway, so the chanting document, this is Asha's work, and then Viranatha's website. These are cool resources. So those of you who are interested in doing these sadhanas, like so much is available on the internet, of course, but a lot of it is just floating around, and what it requires is good editing, good actually good curating. We have to find the right documents, good editing to bring them all together, and then good formatting and good presentation, so then it becomes more accessible than it otherwise would be. Yes. River, you have a question there?
Oh,
Hmm? No? Okay. So maybe we'll take some questions. Yeah, we'll put all the links in the Discord and also on the Patreon so we can access them beyond the Zoom chat. But I think I'm kind of satisfied for now. Oh, I hope you guys don't mind. I just like two more things I want to say, and then let's open for some Q&A. I really honestly thought this was going to be from 6 to 7. We'd just chant some Chandi together, but I got really carried away talking about the first two verses. I'm sorry. Once again, I had a whole other thing that I wanted to do with you guys tonight, but we didn't end up doing that. But I will take some questions in just a few moments, but I want to say this first though. Now, there is the Chandi Parayana, as you know, which is basically just chanting the mantras from the Chandi in the order in which they are presented. This is called Chandi Parayana, which means recitation of the Chandi or ritualistic, systematic recitation of the Chandi. According to the Chandi itself, this is superior to all external rituals. So one does not need to perform puja, nor does one need to do homa, nor does one even need to engage in some kind of purasharana or japa practice, which is what I'm going to talk about next. It's enough, according to the Chandi, to have just chanted the Chandi sincerely and systematically. That's the sadhana, and arguably one can attain the highest realization through that alone. According to the Chandi itself, there are verses towards the end in the Falashruti that say so. I will say this though. In the story of the Chandi, there are these two guys. One is a merchant named conveniently Samadhi, and the other Surata is a king, a dispossessed king, and both of them learn from a sage the identity of the goddess. So the whole Chandi is told within the context of the Markandeya Purana. It's a story within a story, within a story actually, within a story. So the sage who is made us is relaying the story, and one by one you're encountering the episodes of the Chandi, etc. But then at the end of the telling of the Chandi, we zoom out. So much of the time you forget that you're within a story actually. You're in the story of the Chandi, but then at the end, you zoom out of the story. In the beginning, there's like some prologue before you enter into the story. Then when you get into the story, you get so absorbed with the stories of the goddess that you sometimes forget that it's a story within a story within a story. So you zoom out and then notice what these two guys do. After they hear about the goddess, they become obsessed with worshipping her. Each has their own goal in mind, actually. One wants his kingdom back and wants to rule and have all sorts of worldly enjoyment. Sorry for the spoiler. And the other one wants to attain samadhi, union with mother. Both are valid goals. Moksha in the case of samadhi, cute dog, and bhoga in the case of surata. Both of them want the goals of tantra. So they notice this. They go and do a sadhana. It's really remarkable. They go by the bank of a river, they construct a murti of Ma, and they worship that murti with gusto. And allegedly, they are doing some kind of japa, some kind of recitation, using the Devī Sutkam from the Rig Veda, which is 8 verses, one of the oldest texts ever composed by a woman, allegedly the daughter of a sage, about the goddess. So this woman, Vak Devi, she's identified herself with the goddess and is speaking in the first person as the goddess. And those 8 verses are like the declarations of the goddess. And so they're chanting that. And that's from the Rig Veda. So often that's included in Chandi recitations. And Viranatha, if you'd like, maybe I'll send you a Devī Sutkam. I don't have any translations on hand, but you might like to add that. That's arguably the oldest, most ancient Devi text available. And it makes sense then that this Vedic appraisal of the goddess would be included in this Tāntrik Chandi sadhana. And so it's argued, right, that like even after hearing the whole Chandi, there's still room for puja and there's still room for japa. And so what these two do upon hearing about the goddess is they set out to worship her. And so generally what people will do is they'll perform puja. Of course, there's Durgā puja, which is beyond my pay grade, honestly. There's the Durga Puja, the like 5 day long kind of worship. But there's also the puja that we do every single day, the simple 5 item offering, or in some cases 10 or 16 item offerings. Most of you here are very versed in puja, and so that can happen, that can continue. But generally, though, one of the main sadhanas that we enjoin during the course of Navaratri is called Purashcharana. And so I'll have to say a few things about that. Purashcharana means a systematic repetition of a particular mantra. It should be a singular mantra, ideally a mantra that you've received through Diksha, but it could really be any mantra that is ideally a goddess mantra. And now over the course of the next 9 nights, you set a specific number of malas, that means rosaries, to do. So if you're doing 10 rosaries, each rosary is worth 100 repetitions. I mean, yes, 108 beads, but we only count 100 repetitions. The 8 is just there for insurance. So if you do if you do one mala, that's 100 mantras. If you do 10 malas, that's 1,000 mantras. And if you do 100 malas, that's 10,000 mantras. And so that over the course of 10 days will be 100,000 repetitions, which is the ideal. So 1 lakh, we would say, is 100,000 repetitions of your mantra, which is 1,000 malas over the course of 10 days, which is like generally 100 malas a day. Of course, if you did 50 today, maybe you can do 150 tomorrow. Like, you can make up for some of these. There are very specific rules, like you should sit in the same spot and face the same direction and chant the same mantra the same number of times at the same time every single day. Like, there are these specific rules. But my Gurudeva, of course, our lineage is very light on these. And so he's like, no, you can count the malas you do in the car, walking around. Like, some people won't count those. They'll say, no, no, no. It's only when you're sitting down and focusing that it counts. But I think, given how busy we all are, the only thing that matters is keeping up the constant repetition of the mantra. The mantra should flow like an uninterrupted stream of bliss within you. Just keeping up the constant remembrance of the divine. That Japa Samarpana is really Devi Smarana. Just remembering the goddess with your mantra. That's the key here. So I think the most important thing here is quantity. Quality is obviously so important, but quantity and consistency are the things we can control for. Yes, we can try to stay focused. We can try to close our eyes and go deep into the mantra to feel its vibration, to visualize the goddess to whom the mantra is attributed, visualizing her yantra. We can do all of that. But it's kind of hard, actually, to be absorbed just by willing it. I mean, yes, you can. That's a Shambhava Upaya, Icha Shakti, etc., etc. But really, the thing we can control is that we show up and that we stick to the number that we set out for ourselves. So it's very important that you choose a number that is reasonable, that is doable, that is enjoyable. Like, sadhana should push you. It should be difficult, obviously. There should be some struggle, otherwise we're not growing, but it shouldn't be pain. It's like when you're at the gym, when you're lifting something too heavy because it'll actually be painful. But when you're lifting something just outside of your comfort zone, there should be a flow, a joy to doing it. So similarly, choose a number that you can reasonably do every day. Maybe it's 100 malas, maybe it's 10. Don't tell anybody so that you won't compare with one another and you won't become competitive. It's really between you and God. It's like your feed on TikTok. That's between you and God. You can tell a lot about a person from their TikTok feed or from their Instagram. Like, when you click things, like, it shows you, like, the algorithm shows you what you're looking at. It's really funny, actually. The number of times I've taken someone's phone to put my name into their Instagram, and then their algorithm pops up and they look at me and they're like, I don't know what happened. What's all this? It's so funny. It's so funny. Anyway, so this is important that you just stay in your lane. It's between you and God, and it's what is nourishing for you. It's not a social thing. It's not competitive. Very easily, this kind of stuff can turn into like high demand group where it's like, oh my God, like everyone's doing 100 malas a day. Therefore, although it's perfectly unreasonable for me, I too should aspire to 100 malas. Nothing of that sort. Okay, like, this is not a group. You're all individuals. Most of you, if not all of you, are adults, and you're on your own path. You should remember that. Like, although we're all gathered together now in satsang, this is not an organization, it's not a group, it's between you and Ma only. That being said, you don't need to tell anybody what numbers you're doing daily, but it's nice to just have this commitment where you're like, for the next 9 days, or 10 if you want to count Vijaya, and if you counted yesterday, for the next 10 or 9 days, I'm just going to chant this many rounds of my mala, chanting the mantra that either I got through Diksha or that I found in a book or online that I love. I'm just going to chant it every single day consistently. And by the end of all of this, you just tally it all up. So if you did, I don't know, 10 malas every single day for the next 10 days, that's 100 malas, right? And that's like, yeah, that's awesome. And then how many is that? Like 100 by 100, that's 10,000. So you would have chanted 10,000 repetitions of your mantra. That's awesome. And as Jayarata Deva says, it's like super cleansing for the mind. It's like just a reset for the mind. And as we transition into the fall, it is after all the fall goddess festival or the autumnal goddess festival. It's just such a powerful reset and such a wonderful way to connect to the energies of the equinox, the energy of the eclipse that we just had, the new moon, and the next full moon is also, I think, going to, no, there's another eclipse coming, right? So like all this eclipse energy, there's typically eclipses around the time of Navaratri, you would notice. So there's a lot of astrological reasons for why this would be a good time to do sadhana, but also because so many people all around the world are intensifying their sadhana at this time. All of those factors come together to create a really good opportunity for us. So one good Navaratri, and I think I'll close with this claim, one good Navaratri can change your whole life. The Chandi will change your life. That I won't even say can change your life. It will change your life. The Chandi is profoundly transformative, and anybody who takes it up sincerely and earnestly, even a little bit of it can go a very long way. The Chandi is powerful, Navaratri is powerful, consistently dwelling in thoughts of the divine for 9 days straight and committing to a sadhana is so nourishing and so transformative and so powerful. And by the end of all of this, you might develop a taste for Purasharana. Purasharana means chanting a particular mantra a particular number of times for a period of time, a set period of time. Now, as you know, there are some auxiliaries, like after you chant X number of mantras, you do 10% of that in a homa, which we'll talk about another time. So that homa aspect is important, and I'm gonna probably do a homa like just for our community and try to do some mantras. So that's why I sometimes say, like, if you've chanted, say, 100 malas, let me know, and then that way I can like include that your mantra and so I can include that in the homas as far as I'm able to, because obviously it's the time is interesting because we're also doing our own homas, but I want to do a homa all together one time. But that's something that we'll talk about, especially if you come to the retreat in San Francisco. Like a lot of that's going to be centered around homa and learning how to do homa so that you'll be able to do them yourself. But homa is important. Tarpana, marjana, bhojana, all of those are auxiliaries to japa. Don't worry about that for now. For now, it might be enough to just focus on the japa. Just get the numbers because you can control that. You can control quantity. You can control consistency, and you can have faith in the system such that through quantity and through consistency, naturally quality will come. And then the mantra will be so blissful that even if you want to give it up, it won't give you up. Even if you want to stop chanting it, it won't stop chanting you. This is mantra siddhi, when the mantra wakes up and confers its power upon you, when it invigorates you, when it energizes you, then we say, the mantra is awake. And it's Purasharana specifically that awakens mantras. Right? So that's one of the main sadhanas. So therefore, you might want to ask yourself, what do I want to do for these next 9 nights? There's so many different things. You could just keep a lamp lit the whole time, and that could be your sadhana. You could just chant Argala Stotram every single day by your altar, and that could be your sadhana. You could do Argala, Kilaka, Kavacham every single day. Or you could do Shapa Vimochana, Argala, Kilaka, Kavacham, and then you can follow the Chandi recitation course. Or you could just do a puja every single day. Or you could just chant Mahishasura Mardini. Or you could just do Durgā Shapta Shloki. Like, there's so many ways you can celebrate this next 9 nights. And I think one of the best ways is just to do your mantra. It's simple. You just have one mantra, you have your mala, and you chant that mantra to the ground. You just like smooth down all the beads of your Rudraksha mala. May your malas run hot was a blessing one of you guys once gave us. I think Viranatha said, may our malas run hot. Beautiful. So we'll leave it at that for now. Let's just open the floor for any questions, comments, concerns. I did want to say something about the gata because today is the day when we establish the gata sthapana. So those of you who want those mantras, I know I sent them to some people, but those of you who are interested in doing the gata sthapana, you can do it tomorrow also, no problem. I have the mantras, but the problem is they're in this form. So a lot of them are Vedic mantras, like, from the Shukla Yajurveda. And so I have this, what do you call it? This padati for installing the gata. So those of you who are doing that, who want some mantras for that, it's pretty short actually. The whole thing is pretty short. It's just everything that's in red here. I was making this padati for somebody, and then actually for them, they weren't going to be using a gata, so I wrote skip here, but of course we're not skipping it. And unfortunately, I highlighted it all in red, and this is a PDF file, and I don't know how to like I'm like, tech support, make it not red. Anyway, I'm working on this so it's not all red. But I just want to show you. Here are the mantras for the gata. You know, you would like tie a red thread around it. You would draw a red swastika on it. It's usually a clay pot with a green coconut, but you can use any vessel really as long as you cover it. There are some Tāntrik bija mantras where you bless the water and the kusha grass and the durva grass. Of course, there are some things here that you're probably not going to have, like this supari or this haritaki. So if you look over here, these are like special seeds with special Ayurvedic powers, special magical properties, you could argue. So this is what the supari is. Areca nut. I just Googled it. I've never heard this word before, but areca nut is what supari is. And this is myrobalan. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this is haritaki. So there's like certain seeds that you're supposed to have for this ritual. There's also alta. And I put this in the Discord, but there's some jewels also that would be helpful to have. So if you go to the Discord, you can see I dropped them over here. The Pancha Ratnas, they are diamond, ruby, emerald, sapphire, pearl, 5 jewels. Also, there's the 5 songs composed by an 18th century Carnatic music master. So these are not to be confused with those. Then there's the Navaratnas. So ruby for the sun, pearl for the moon, red coral for Mars, emerald for Mercury, yellow sapphire for Jupiter, diamond for Venus, blue sapphire for Saturn, hessonite for Rahu, cat's eye for Ketu. And sometimes these lists differ, by the way, as to which stone is for which Navagraha or which stone is for which element, etc. So sometimes gold and silver are included for the sun and for the moon, respectively. Anyway, these are 5 jewels or 9 jewels, and often Gata Stapana involves a lot of things. Durva grass, specific kind of crab grass, kusha grass, a specific kind of fruit, specific flowers. You need paddy. That's important, like the scattering of paddy, because a lot of this is also a harvest festival. So the Gata Stapana, obviously the clay is the womb of the Divine Mother. She represents the earth, and the ceremony is like super Vedic, by the way. There's so many Vaidika mantras because you start Navaratri with the very highest, most refined tone, and you end Navaratri, literally in some padatis, as I've heard, it's walking to the river to to immerse mother while making loud and dirty jokes. So like using language in the most uncouth way at the end and using language in the most refined way in the beginning. The whole of Navaratri covers the full spectrum of language and mother's expression in this universe, from high to low, from low to high, until you're confounded in your idea of pure and impure, high and low. So it's a beautiful ritual. But today is when we install the gata, when we do gata sthapana, establishing mother in the clay pot. So those of you who want those mantras, just message me here. I'm just going to try to clean it up a bit so the padati is like a little more understandable. In any case, let me just do the Gata Stapana, and one day we can, maybe next year or something, when I'm a bit more proficient at it, because I don't do it that often either. So it's something that I should practice a little more. And so I think once I've practiced it enough until where I'm like kind of confident with it, then I will maybe do a class on it. But just give me like a year or something. But the mantras are here anyway. The padati that I'm going to be using to do my Gata Stapana tonight, I'm freely going to share that with you if you also want to do Gata Stapana. Just note that the padati is not really that fleshed out. It doesn't have like clear instructions. So it kind of presupposes that you have some puja knowledge. And yeah, you draw the swastika on the pot. The coconut gets a sindur eye though. So you have to dot the green coconut with sindur, but the swastika goes on the yantra. Actually, I'm not doing a swastika, I'm doing a yantra. I'm going to do my Kālī yantra on the thing. So there are variations. But yeah, generally a swastika for a general gata stapana. In the gata, we put the pancharatnas, the 9 jewels, sorry, the 5 jewels and the 9 jewels, and usually we add waters from various places. Ganga water, obviously, but you know, literally waters from the rivers around you or the lakes around you or waters from the nearest ocean. Like it's important to use water of the land to represent the sthana devatas and grama devatas. And of course, for Vamachara stuff, you can use kinds of liquor, and the kinds of liquor you use are also important. Draksha or Shaudra or Pishti or something. The mix is kind of interesting. So what actually goes into the gata, we can talk a lot about that. There's so many different padatis as to what goes into the gata for what kind of energy. Like Chinnamasta might be like blood or something like that, you know, and like they're like different deities might like different what do you call it? Um substances. I heard a really funny story from Swami Bhajanananda. I'll tell it to you after we finish this recording. So anyway, thank you all so very much. I had so much fun. Hopefully that's everything you need. My hope is just to get started on this sadhana. Let's maybe open the floor for some questions. So if you don't mind, thank you all so much for your patience. I know that was like 2.5 hours of just technical stuff. I'd hoped to do some philosophy with you, but maybe this is just the flow of the night. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your patience. And may everyone be aflame with awakened consciousness. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Durgā Arpanam Astu Jai Shri Sārada Devi Ki Jai Sarada Arpanam Astu Sarada Arpanam Astu Om